And this is Mike Fader on Sirius XM Left 127. We've got a couple of guests tonight, and obviously there's a lot to talk about this week. These days there's more to talk about than you can ever squeeze in. Before we go to our first guest, I think this is as good a time as any with Paul Ryan floating around, infecting everybody, to send you to my to the thing I did on YouTube called New Republican Prayer. For anybody people who listen regularly have heard me mention this, but anybody who's new to this program, I did something with a friend on YouTube called New Republican Prayer. So check that out. Also, one or two other things before we go to our guest. There's sort of a running political conversation I have about mostly things domestic, American politics, which takes place on a Facebook page called Occupied Territory. So if you're on Facebook or you want to visit it, just Google Occupied Territory and Facebook. Last but not least, if you want to join my mailing list or contact me, go to Faderfiles, FEDERFILES.com. All right. By coincidence, there was a front page article today, the New York Times, which very much will involve our guest. And our guest is Jamal Abdi. Hello.
Hey, how's it going? Okay.
He is the policy director of the National Iranian American Council and the author of Washington's and Tehran's Vicious Spin Cycle. Served as a congressional advisor, liaison, and expert on foreign affairs, immigration, and defense. You no doubt saw the article that was in the front page of the Times today?
Is this the one about the MEK terror group?
Yeah, taking what was... we're having a little trouble with your reception there. Are you just on a regular landline or what?
Oh, yeah, I'm on a landline.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. No, sorry. I'm on a cell phone.
Oh, on a cell phone? Yeah, it's a little tinny, but we'll try our best. So today on front, for people who haven't caught this story, and probably most haven't, the headline in the Times today is Star Lobbyists Help Iran Group Escape Shadow. Dissidents taken off terrorism list by the State Department. Lots of pregnant words in there, but let me give you the first paragraph real quick. It says here, Washington, rarely in the annals of lobbying in the Capitol has so obscure a cause attracted so stellar a group of supporters. Former directors of the CIA and FBI, retired generals, and famous politicians of both parties. And it's all about a group that has been for many, many, many years on the State Department's terrorism list. And now, just very recently, Hillary Clinton took the group off the terrorism list. And there's a lot of talk about this. And maybe the group is called, by the way, let's see, Mujahideen Khalq, or the People's Mujahideen. And they were a group of Iranians that were involved in Iran, left and got kicked out, and reestablished themselves in Iraq. And they've been on the terrorism list for a long time. And one of the reasons the article's on the front page is because so many politicians in Congress, former governors, generals, CIA directors, FBI directors, mostly under Bush, have been pushing for this group to be taken off the terrorism list. Coincidentally, all of these people were paid a lot of money to speak to this group. So it sounds like the same old, but our guest here should be in a perfect position to talk about it, because the National Iranian Council, the National Iranian American Council, which our guest is the policy director of, is included in this article. And it says here, the National Iranian American Council, which has long feuded with this group, MEK, denounced the delisting decision, saying it opens the door to congressional funding of the MEK to conduct terrorist attacks in Iran and makes war with Iran more likely. So what are we talking about? What is this group?
Well, the group itself, it's they were involved in the opposition to the Shah in Iran prior to the 79 revolution. They did play a role in ousting him, but they were partners with, but never really friendly with the, Khomeini and the mullahs. And so after 79, after they got rid of the Shah, they ended up feuding with Khomeini and eventually had a falling out and were ended up leaving Iran and ultimately ended up taking up refuge with Saddam and fought under him against Iran, and then later were sort of Saddam's a militia group that fought under Saddam and helped him put down some of the Kurdish uprisings and some of those things, and sort of like a militia group working under Saddam Hussein. They were, when George Bush was talking about why we need to go to Iraq, he cited Saddam's work with this group as evidence of him working with terrorists.
So as far as the Iranians are concerned, this group is basically a revolutionary or a traitorous group, right?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's odd that before the revolution, they were actually, a lot of Iranians thought that they played a big role in getting rid of the Shah, and they were sort of, a lot of MEK lost their lives in that, and people thought of them, frankly, as heroic for doing that.
Yeah,
a lot of people have said these guys injected violence into the revolutionary movement, and that was bad. But at the time, Iranians thought these guys sacrificed a lot in order to get rid of this guy. But once they actually crossed over and started fighting under Saddam, they lost all credibility among Iranians, and now they're probably, inside of Iran, people detest the regime. They, they're no fans of the Islamic Republic per se, but they absolutely reject the MEK. This is a group that they just consider traitors. And then the other aspect of this is that they actually sort of formed into this, what could be described only as a cult.
A cult, like a fringe, an Islamic cult, or what? I mean, a religious cult, or like a fringe group?
It's, a cult of personality. They're led by this husband and wife, the Rajavis, and there's sort of this worship of them. All the members of the MEK are forced to divorce if they were already married. They're forced to actually, they have the space in Iraq, and the children would be sent out of Iraq to European countries and would be involved in these schemes to raise money, these false charities. And then the people inside of the MEK, there's actually, it's well documented, these strange sort of, these rituals they have to go through in order to demonstrate that their minds are clear and they're devoted only to the Rajavis. And this is all documented by the State Department and the FBI. So
this sounds pretty familiar to any Americans who are familiar with the kind of cult, like some of the fundamentalist Christian cults we have in this country or whatever. So how is it? So the big question is obviously, which the Times undertook to answer. How is it that such a fringe, strange, violent group gets so many backers of famous politicians and highly placed American officials and people in Congress? How is that?
There are a few dynamics here. The first one, the easiest one, is the money. These guys were paying these speaker fees to. It started out as these speaker fees to people like Rudy Giuliani, John Bolton, sort of devoted right-wing, sort of neocon folks who not only were happy to take money to speak on whatever cause was willing to pay them, but also subscribe to this notion that, okay, well, these guys may be a little nutty, but they're anti the Iranian regime. They want to topple the Iranian regime, and they could be used as sort of this force in order to do that.
Well, this is I see.
That's the second dynamic. In Washington, this anti-Iran strain of, okay, how do we deal with this regime? How do we do regime change in Iran?
So didn't we have a little trouble like this once before, if memory serves me well, with the Taliban in the similar kinds of motives?
Yeah, there are people who are supporting the Taliban, and I think even more accurate would be the Ahmed Chalabi and the Iraqi National Congress. This group of exiles who didn't really have a whole lot of standing on the ground inside the country, that they claimed that they were the MEK claims they're the legitimate opposition inside of Iran, although they have no credibility there. But they're here, lobbying in Washington for policies that can, they think, position themselves to be the ones who can take over Iran once we go in there and implement regime change.
So that this sort of fits under the blunt instrument foreign policy mind that a lot of these people have, these right-wingers have, right? We'll use whoever or whatever to get at these people.
Absolutely. This is total opportunism. I think a lot of these people who sign on to support this group, they know that this is sort of that they know it's a cult. They know that there are some strange things that they believe in, and that they, the leaders of this group actually treat their members, their subjects, very poorly, subject them to human rights abuses and things like that. They probably acknowledge that they don't have a lot of support inside of Iran, but what they do bring to the table is that they are Iranian exiles who are saying, we want to topple the regime, and are giving the sort of, credibility to that argument in Washington. And on the other hand, actually have, resources on the ground where they can engage in, what anybody who actually looked at this objectively would say are paramilitary or terrorist attacks inside of Iran to destabilize, attempt to destabilize the government there. So it was this friendship of opportunity that developed.
Are they very well armed and supplied, and if so, by who?
Well, according to U.S. officials quoted in there was an NBC expose, and it was later, Cy Hirsch picked up on it and expounded a little bit on it. But according to what U.S. officials said, Mossad is training and funding these guys to commit assassinations and blow things up inside of Iran.
Do you think is there some linkage with the assassinations of the nuclear scientists?
That's what the U.S. officials that were quoted, on background. That's what they were saying. That Mossad trained and paid for MEK to assassinate these officials inside of Iran.
Well, are they actually physically located near the border?
Well, that's the other dynamic with the State Department taking them off the list. Yeah, the MEK had this base called Camp Ashraf. It was inside of Iraq. It was right along the border with Iran, and MEK leadership viewed that as a very important sort of strategic area for them to occupy. So they were in this camp right on the border there, and the whole issue was U.S. was trying to move them away from the border because the Iraqi government, first of all, views these guys as the last vestige of Saddam, and then second, actually gets a lot of pressure from Iran that they need to move these guys off of their border because the Iranian government is saying these guys are going to come across the border and try to blow things up, which they have been doing. So the U.S. was trying to facilitate a deal to move these guys away from that border to another location where they could then hopefully, do what you do with a cult like this, which is, separate them from their leadership, deprogram them, and then figure out a way to get them out of Iraq and out of this terrorist organization.
Well, what does it mean in realistic terms that they've been taken off the terrorist list? What does it mean? I mean, how does that affect things really on the ground there?
Well, as far as this is sort of the problem because Al Qaeda, for instance, is on the terrorist list, so that means that the U.S. takes steps to prevent, for instance, Americans from sending funds to Al Qaeda or Al Qaeda from being able to get visas to come to the United States and can use certain instruments to crack down financially on Al Qaeda money raising.
I guess also according to both the Bush and Obama administrations, if you're officially designated a terrorist, you have no rights whatsoever, legally or in any other way, right?
Yeah, though I think that I'm not actually sure if that applies. I mean, if they can, legally torture somebody who's on the FTO list, I don't know if that necessarily applies.
Well, they don't say it, but I mean, if if you look at the National Defense Authorization Act that the president signed, that little part in there that somebody successfully sued so far in federal court to throw out anybody providing material. In other words, They seem to have thrown out the Bill of Rights if somebody gets called a terrorist. And that's a separate conversation. But these people are now off the terrorist list. So that means a lot of money can pour in legitimately to them, right?
Exactly. So what this basically does is it says Congress can basically fund these guys. The United States government can actually fund these guys as a, opposition movement that sort of are guys on the ground in order to attack Iran.
So that's another way. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just to go back to your previous point about the terrorist list and taking away civil rights. I think that my personal view is that these terrorist lists that we have are actually They're haphazard. They don't make a lot of, there's a lot of questions about civil liberties and things like that. And there probably do need to be mechanisms in order to crack down on, financing for these things. But with the MEK, as the New York Times piece points out, these guys were supposedly on this terrorist list, and yet, when I go to congressional offices, they're running around having meetings with members of Congress, giving campaign donations to them, organizing hearings, throwing parties in Capitol Hill, and at the end of the day, the terrorist listing meant nothing. It was completely subjective. If you are an enemy of our enemy, doesn't matter if you're on a terrorist list, you can be our friend as long as you have enough money and you know the right people.
Well, I mean, that you could throw anybody into that bin. I mean, Saddam Hussein was our pal once, because he was fighting Iran. The Taliban were our pals because they were fighting the Russians. There's no end to this. The Contras in Nicaragua, right?
And the scary thing, though, is now the actual, the legal obstacles to actually formally having a relationship with these guys has been cleared away. So the floodgates have been opened, and now these guys have a free hand to do whatever they want in Washington. And I'm really, my worry is that they have enough money and enough political connections to manage to basically pressure their way off of the terrorist list. Imagine what they can do now in terms of pressuring the United States government and pulling off the type of media campaign that would be necessary to launch a war on Iran.
So it makes a powder keg situation even worse than it was, right?
Yeah, it removes the few sort of tripwires we had to prevent this powder keg from becoming something much from lighting off.
So obviously there's some group of people or some forces at work here that persuaded. Can Hillary Clinton just universally all by herself remove somebody from the terrorist list, or is there some other process involved besides her just doing it? Is the president involved? I mean, is the president involved?
Supposedly this was strictly State Department. Hillary Clinton made this decision.
Really?
And I'll tell you, folks in the State Department, I mean, I don't know what Hillary Clinton's personal views are, but they did not do this with a smile on their face. I don't think they were necessarily happy about having to make this decision.
Well, it sounds to me like, without getting into conspiracy theories, that it's some very powerful group of people wanted them off the list, and pressure was brought to bear, and she took them off the list, right? Because they sound like they richly deserve to be on the list.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, there's the political dynamic, and yes, absolutely, there are very powerful people who wanted to take them off the list and put a lot of pressure on the State Department to do that. On the other hand, with the situation inside of Iraq, with the U.S. trying to evacuate them from this base on the Iranian border and trying to prevent a situation in which the Iraqis go in and start killing these guys, or what the MEK actually threatened, which is, if you don't do what we want, we're actually going to have, a Jonestown massacre. We're going to do a mass suicide. They actually use that as this, leveraging chip.
So they were blackmailing our State Department by saying that?
The State Department had all these pressures. They had the political pressures. They had the pressures on the ground to try to prevent something really bad from happening. And eventually, I think what they calculated is, this is the best deal we could get. We had to cave on taking them off the terrorist list, but we prevented this massacre, and we have, hopefully ended the political pressure on us regarding this group.
Maybe this is.
At the end of the day, though,
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the political pressure is only going to get even worse.
It seems to me that it's always possible that since this horrible, violent chess game, or even could be catastrophic chess game that's going on between the United States, Israel, and Iran, which we're going to talk about right now after we move from this subject, because it's a good lead-in. This could be one more chess move by somebody like the president or, the National Security Council or whoever it is who runs these things. This could be one more chess move saying to Iran, look, we move our knight over here next to your border. Now what?
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's a chess move. And it's not necessarily the president or the NSC or the State Department, but it is the people who want to see this escalate into a confrontation and end the diplomacy and move towards the next steps.
Well, the same people who brought us the last couple of wars. So
exact same people.
Yep. Well, maybe there is some place where we could use the MEK, but let's not get into that. So the big news in foreign policy, or some of the big news in foreign policy recently, is this whole war that's going on between Netanyahu and this arm wrestling, let's put it that way, between Netanyahu and Obama, where he's not taking his calls, or he's busy, he can't meet him. And Netanyahu was demanding what did he call it? A red light, a certain line.
A red line.
A red line. Now it's not a line in the sand, it's a red line. The line changes. Okay, so he's demanding a red line, which is to say that, I want you, the American president, and of course Netanyahu, who's no dope. He knows it's an election, right? And Obama's got to look tough, blah, blah, blah. So he says, I want you to draw a line right now. And in fact, the line has already been passed as far as we're concerned, but I want you, the United States, to have a line drawn that says that we can go. It's a go to bomb the nuclear facilities, and the Americans refuse, and Obama basically refused to do that, right?
Yeah, well, that's actually not completely accurate. That's
okay.
what the Obama administration has said. It's accurate. I mean, as far as Netanyahu is demanding a red line, Obama gave him a red line, but didn't give him the red line that he wanted. In March, when Bibi Netanyahu came to the United States, he came to Washington to meet with the president and to speak in front of the AIPAC conference.
Right.
There was a big push from him, and then AIPAC queued up some legislation and sent it out to the Hill and lobbied heavily for it to basically get the president to say the red line for the United States is a nuclear weapons capability. If Iran achieves the capability to build a nuclear weapon, not actually moves to build a nuclear weapon, but has the capability, that's our red line. We will go in and strike.
Well, that's a very vague determination, right?
It's extremely right. I mean, it's something that, it's completely subjective. I could say right now Iran technically has a nuclear weapons capability. Japan has a nuclear weapons capability. Any country that has a nuclear program technically has the capability to make a bomb out of that program.
But there's a lot.
It's a ridiculous.
But there's a lot of players involved here. I mean, you can understand. I guess, from one point of view, you can understand Israel. Israel is right there. You know what I mean? And Iran does supply Hezbollah. Iran is shipping weapons to its enemies.
Right.
Right. So Israel has an action, and then they've got, of course. They've got Ahmadinejad, who's I don't know what kind of power he has there for real, and you can tell me better than I would ever know. But here's a guy who just routinely says, our plan is we've got the missiles and we got the capability, we can wipe this country off the map. So, for all sorts of reasons, Israel has a right to be upset about this. They've already shown that they're capable of flying planes over and bombing nuclear facilities. They did it in Iraq, and people claim they did it in Syria. So. And now the other concern for Israel is obviously that they're building so deep underground and they're getting so close that pretty soon it'll be out of their reach. And they want the United States. To me, it's a little bit like blackmail, though, because in the middle of an election,
Yeah, in the middle of the election, Bibi's saying either you give us what we want as far as setting up this tripwire for the United States to go to war, or we're going to do it ourselves and you're going to get sucked into a war. That's really what's happening. But as far as the threat to Israel, I mean, I think, look, at the end of the day, we do need to get assurances that Iran never crosses the line to actually build a bomb. But there are the real game here right now is not a question of how much uranium has Iran enriched, what is our red line. That's all. I'm sorry, but that's all.
By the way, I just would like to let you know that there are words you can use on the air here. You may not choose to use them, but this is not regular radio, so So go ahead.
I may take advantage of that, but the real question here is about where do we end up regarding U.S.-Iran relations? Mm-hmm. Are we on a trajectory in which we keep Iran contained in a box at war, in a Cold War with the United States, and no relationships, completely isolated, potentially at war? Is that the direction we're going in? Or are we going in the direction of basically war until regime change? Or are we going in the direction of eventually reaching a deal in which Iran gradually, rejoins the community of nations and we actually have U.S.-Iran relations? Mm-hmm. And this is not a battle that started because of the 2012 elections. This started during the 2008 elections when Senator Barack Obama said, I will have unconditional negotiations with Iran. That was a huge red flag for the neoconservatives over here, much of the Israeli hardliners, and frankly much of the Israeli establishment who has set up a security portfolio based on the notion that the U.S. and Iran are never going to have relations. Mm-hmm. And the idea that Obama was actually going to pursue a climb down from this conflict between the U.S. and Iran that has been brewing for the past 30 years and actually move that backwards and have, try to resolve the nuclear issue and pursue relations that could actually bring Iran into the fold. And, Bibi Netanyahu doesn't want to see that happen. So what we have now is, and, based on very real concerns about Iran's nuclear program, concerns that should be addressed, but concerns that need to be addressed diplomatically, not through military action.
But
there's no military solution to this.
But how can you address something? Sometimes after all the reports, the International Atomic Energy, everybody, the UN, the United States, Israel, everybody estimates, the Iranian statements themselves, satellite pictures. If you throw everything in there and all the intelligence and all the different opinions, your gut feeling sometimes clicks in. And my gut feeling is that they're probably trying to develop, they've got missiles. They're probably trying to develop bombs. The question is, there's all kinds of questions. One is the Israelis have a couple of hundred nuclear weapons, right? But they don't participate in any kind of international treaties. There's no inspections. They can get away with that, but the Iranians aren't allowed to have it. But on the other hand, the Israelis have never said they want to wipe Iran off the map. So it's a complicated situation, right?
Yeah, and the notion that Iran is only pursuing nuclear energy, I think, is pretty ridiculous. Obviously, what Iran is doing is this is nuclear hedging. They want to get as close as they can to the line, but I don't think that they, at least right now, they're not going to cross that line. They're not going to. The difference that we have with Iran versus Iraq or even like North Korea or Pakistan is that we have inspectors on the ground inside of Iran. If they make a move to actually build a bomb, we're going to know about it.
You mean United Nations inspectors, right?
Yeah, IAEA inspectors.
Right. Okay.
But the problem is, if Iran gets to the point where they're right on the line there, Israel and Saudi Arabia and our other U.S. allies in the region believe that Iran's going to have more strategic maneuverability, that they're going to have more of a say in what's happening in the region. Mm-hmm. And the concern is, if you look at this from Israel's perspective, Israel doesn't want to see the U.S. and Iran have relations when Israel and Iran don't have relations, and suddenly Israel gets left out of the equation. And this security infrastructure that we have in place, in which the U.S. invests in states like Israel and Saudi Arabia, and it's working against states like Iran, suddenly crumbles, and we have this sort of new security infrastructure that includes states like Iran. When we talk about existential threats, folks like the defense minister inside of Israel, Ehud Barak, has said this isn't about an existential threat. This is about geopolitical posturing, not giving Iran the type of maneuverability. And really, when I see this, I look at this as the attempt to preserve a status quo in the Middle East that's just not sustainable. And I don't.
This is like when I used to play when my kids were really little. I used to play with blocks with them, on the floor. And it's one of those things where you build something that has like 32 blocks and they're all perched on the edge. Anything could knock this whole thing down. And it's getting to the point where it's really crazy. If people really don't sit down and talk to each other, it absolutely inevitably will result in some kind of war, either a limited war or a world war. We're that close to it. It's like children playing with explosives,
Yeah. And nobody's ready to make those tough decisions. In Tel Aviv, in Tehran, in Washington, make the tough decisions about, okay, you know what, this is not sustainable, and either we have we allow this to become a military confrontation that sustains this for a few more years, or we have to make the tough decisions about, okay, we're actually going to figure out how we're going to resolve this diplomatically, how we're going to start integrating our, the political side, the economic side, and all these things. Well, and nobody's willing to do that.
There's a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you that I'm assuming that you would know about. That what's going on inside Iran in terms of Iranian politics and the forces at work there, because that's always part of it too. And one or two other questions, but we do have to take a break. Would you mind sticking around and I can ask you one or two other questions?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so we're talking to Jamal Abdi, and he's the policy director of the National Iranian American Council. And is this a book or an article? Washington's and Tehran's Vicious Spin Cycle. Is that a book?
I write for on Huffington Post. That's the article that I have on Huffington.
All right, so people can check that out. Washington and Tehran's vicious spin cycle. Jamal Abdi, we'll be back after we take a break, and then one or two other questions about really what's going on inside Iran that we may not even know about. Okay, we're back. One question before we talk a little bit about observations you can give us about what's going on in Iran and what's happening there is, do you think, I suppose this is speculation, do you think if the Israelis actually did decide to go ahead and send bombers over there and blow up nuclear facilities with all the insanity that would cause and the harm and the damage, do you think that the United States, first of all, what would Iran's real reaction to that be? And would we be inevitably dragged into a war there?
I don't know what Iran would do. I think they would have a few options, and some of them would be less likely to draw the U.S. in. Some of them would be more likely. The ones that would be, the least escalatory would be to leave the Non-Proliferation Treaty, to eject IAEA inspectors, possibly go to the UN and say this was an unjustified attack and use it politically to isolate Israel and to eliminate all the sanctions that have been put in place against Iran. A more escalatory response would be for Iran to, they could mine the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's energy flows through. They could retaliate militarily against Israel, but also against U.S. Troops that are in the region. And I think that regardless of what Iran actually calculates to do, there's a huge possibility for miscalculation. So Iran maybe chooses to do something militarily that's not extremely escalatory, but is misperceived by the U.S. or Israel as something bigger than it actually is, and then you have this spiraling of things getting out of control. And there are just so many variables that we don't know. We don't know whether this gets contained or this actually spills out into, who knows, an all-out regional war that we're invested in for another decade or two.
Well, let's talk about then. I think most people these days, we hear certain sort of major names. We know that there are certain forces at work here in Iran. The religious establishment. We don't know how much control they have over things. I mean, obviously there's power struggles and players over there. Then there's the Revolutionary Guard, which seems as if it's sort of like a pattern like the Egyptian military, where they own businesses and they have all this money and they control political power too. And then there is whatever in between that, whatever ruling party that are just politicians that aren't involved in that unless they're divided between the two. Then you've got what people refer to as the Iranian people, and who knows what that means. And wouldn't they prefer democracy? I mean, once they did, and our CIA took care of that. And and then we backed the Shah. But what is going on there? Who's in charge? Who's running the show? And what are the forces at play inside there?
I think that we're back in a place where the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, is definitely in control.
Okay.
There was some questions about that in 2009 after Iran had this election where Ahmadinejad was reelected, but most people believe it was fraudulent. And you had millions of Iranians taking to the streets and protesting, asking where's my vote. There was a question then about how much does the supreme leader actually have this whole thing in control? Is this guy losing his grip on power? I think the past 3 years he's actually really demonstrated he's consolidated his power, and he's the guy who is in control. And the interesting thing is that whereas he basically intervened in 2009 to make sure that Ahmadinejad won that election, unfairly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was his call. He went in and he made sure that happened. But now there's been a falling out between him and Ahmadinejad. Ahmadinejad, I think, thought that he had more power than he did, and tested his power a little bit. And the supreme leader really clipped his wings. Now this guy, he's a lame duck. He's completely marginalized. There's a question of whether he is going to try to run. Somebody in his camp is going to try to run for the presidency, which Iran's going to have its presidential elections next summer. So Ahmadinejad is not going to be around a year from now. But there's a question of whether he's going to try to run a guy from his camp. And, I think people are thinking that if he tries to do that, it's going to get smacked down by the supreme leader, and there's going to be some other establishment candidate that is backed by the supreme leader who gets elected to the presidency.
So that's those
and then
two.
The other,
yeah.
Well, I was going to say the other element that has really been marginalized recently as the reformist camp, which is sort of, the people who they play within the system, but they want to reform the system and eventually move towards a democratic system. Mm-hmm. And those guys, in 2009 was sort of the biggest, had their, they were behind the protests, and people were, the Green Movement is what they were called. Mm-hmm. And now they have really been pushed to the sidelines. You don't hear a whole lot about them. And because of that, I think politically inside of Iran, people are really disengaged. They're sort of, resigned to, this is going to be the state of affairs, and we're in this, we're sanctioned, and we're in this state of, near war with Israel and the United States. So there's not a lot of movement in that direction right now. People are sort of pushing those feelings to the sidelines.
So there's
for the next opportunity.
There's no likelihood there of any kind of uprising like we've seen in other countries.
Well, we had the uprising. 2009. That was the first of the. Before the Arab Spring, it was the Green Revolution, and
but now,
and the Iranian government, used force and put it down. And this is something that has been bubbling under the surface for a century. You mentioned 1953. Mm-hmm. The Iranians actually managed to get a democratically elected prime minister, and he was taken out by the CIA. But this is something that's not going away. We see it coming back all the time. And right now, I would say it's dormant. It's referred to as the fire under the ashes. But if we can get to a place where there's enough political space, where we can where there aren't the sort of tensions that put a country politically in a warlike footing, where they're defending against outside threats, and we see some of these civil society actors able to have a little bit of space to organize, this is a big problem for the establishment, the Islamic Republic establishment inside of Iran. And yes, it's not a matter of months, it's a matter of years, mm-hmm. even more than that, but it's, the Iranian people do want democracy, they do want their rights, and that's not going away.
Well, what about
next year? Probably not.
What about the military power then? I was always given to understand that they were somewhat of a power unto themselves.
Yeah, the IRGC, as I think you explained it pretty well, big share of the economy is now owned by them, and under the sanctions, they've actually profited immensely. They've taken an even bigger share of the economy and are running a lot of things. As it stands right now, though, they are pretty much in lockstep behind the supreme leader. I think that any sort of conflict that arises between the military, the IRGC, and the supreme leader, I don't think that's going to happen until you actually see Khamenei, the supreme leader. When he passes, he's relatively, he's like in his 70s. There's always rumors that he's sick or this or that, but until he leaves, I don't think the IRGC is really going to try to take him on. They're pretty happy with things the way they are.
Well, obviously one of the great ironies here, as it is in almost all foreign relations, is that the people in Israel or the United States who are neocons or who want to invade the place or want to exercise our military options, or the heavies, the hard cases, right? They want to do that because Iran is a dictatorship and is a threat to the region. Of course, if we all backed off and Israel backed off, then there would be more room. There would be less bad guys for them to use as straw men, and democracy could flourish there better. That's my opinion.
Well, no, the hardliners in Iran and the hardliners in the U.S. and Israel, they all thrive on this confrontation.
That's right. It's mirror images.
Yeah, they're the ones. It's a symbiotic relationship where the more we're talking about war, the more the hardliners thrive and dominate the conversation politically. And
then also you get lots of weapons sold, so that's always good for somebody.
Well, yeah, then you have all the weapons in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states that the U.S. is selling in order to supposedly assuage the fears of these dictatorships there. So yes, it is a symbiotic relationship that involves many hardline actors who are all thriving on this threat that we're going to be at a war between the U.S., Israel, and Iran.
It's amazing this mirror image thing seems to work in almost every area. Like, for instance, all this stuff that's going on now with these idiots and bigots and fools that made this film, Christian fundamentalists of various shades, colors, and types, Americans, Coptic Christians, whatever. They all get together and they make this film. Some people over in the Middle East who want to stir up even more trouble, make sure it's translated and shown as widely as possible. So basically, there's another mirror image. You get hundreds of people in various places, and people don't pay attention to the fact. They should read carefully. It doesn't say thousands of people. It says hundreds of people when you read the articles. That's important to look at, right? And so you get hundreds of people in these different countries who are, rioting or enraged or whatever. Forget about the fact that people may be using them, but they're enraged. So you got fringe elements on both sides. In the other case, you've got neocons and people who are weapons makers and hard cases who are involved in political power on the other side. It's just so frustrating sometimes because if you're in the middle, if you want to be a decent, reasonable person, and there's more of them, hopefully, in the world than other types of people, you feel like a piece of toast,
And yeah, completely marginalized. Whenever, with the Libyan example, the ambassador, Ambassador Stevens, who was killed,
right,
was actually, a hero to a lot of people. But those people their voices aren't the ones that we're hearing projected. It's the ones who decided to exploit the situation in order to assassinate the guy.
And the media,
so now they're the ones getting the attention.
Yeah, and the media is no better. I mean, if you take a place like, they're all bad. And you take a place like, was it Newsweek or I forget? I think it's Newsweek that had Muslim rage.
Yeah.
Give me a break. Did anybody ever notice? And there's an article in the paper today, maybe on the 5th page somewhere, without any pictures, of thousands of people marching in Libya. Supporting the U.S. and mourning the ambassador's death. Thousands of people, not hundreds.
It doesn't sell, though.
Where's the pictures?
And as far as Iran goes, it's the same thing. When somebody is trying to, civil society is trying to organize, or you have these guys trying to reform the system, well, that's not sexy, and that doesn't deal with these supposedly imminent threats. And so instead, we have policymakers here in Washington saying, no, we have to deal with the threats. And so we need to actually feed into the hardliners and aggrandize their position in society. And so we end up in a conflict among hardliners instead of a situation where there's enough space for these moderate voices to actually be able to organize and do what needs to be done in order to actually solve the problem.
Well, as far as you're concerned, then, obviously, do you believe that if Mr. Obama gets reelected, that he will still maintain his own hard line against Israel's hard line, that he will still push for negotiations? Also, are these sanctions really working in a major way? They seem to be causing some difficulty and suffering.
As for the sanctions, if your metric for success is suffering, then they are absolutely working. If your metric is they're causing the Iranians to be willing to give up their nuclear program, I think they're failing miserably, because when we've actually had, a few months ago we had a round of serious negotiations, and the Iranians, they did, partially because of the sanctions, but this is also something that they've been putting on the table for a while. They put certain elements of their nuclear program on the table. Let's do an initial deal.
Right.
Well, the most provocative elements of our program, we will compromise on that. We will ship out 20% uranium. We'll stop enriching to that level. But in exchange, we want the U.S. or the EU to not go forward with oil sanctions. And we said, nope, sorry. We got these sanctions all queued up. These are more valuable than the compromises. And so the sanctions end up perpetuating the conflict. Unless we're willing to trade them, we're not going to get anything for them. And, it's so difficult to get a deal, and politically to give up sanctions in the United States is, it's a non-starter, especially in an election year. So sanctions have become the problem.
I remember that offer by the Iranians, and it was very encouraging for people who don't want to see the world blown up. And I thought that was a pretty good deal that they would offer that. It makes sense for everybody.
But, for Obama to say, okay, we got this deal and we're going to give up on these sanctions, well, then he can't go into the general election saying, I got all these sanctions against Iran. And so he decided, I think it was very much a political decision. He decided not to do it. And so the sanctions have become an obstacle. Now, in a new term, my hope is the guy comes into office and he has a little bit more political capital. He can actually get this interim deal that can build on a bigger deal, and we can actually have sustained diplomacy. But if that doesn't work out, if we see the same thing that we saw in his first term in office, where we do very limited talks and then they fall apart and we end up back on the pressure track, I think we are so close to a military confrontation that I fear that, Obama or Romney were going to end up at war with Iran.
Well, I mean, Romney made it pretty clear that's actually what he'll do in about 1 second. Obama, you have a little bit more hope for. But I mean, it really, when you look at it, I mean, because Mr. Obama wants to get reelected, he's keeping the pot boiling in a way that could cause it to explode. So that's sort of inexcusable behavior too. But he wants to get reelected. It's all about him, right?
Yeah, and the fact is that given the political climate here, there's really no space to actually get anything done. And that's not just foreign policy. That's anything. We've been in this election cycle for the past 2 years, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for Obama to actually get something done that will get us closer to resolving this crisis, he is going to have to use some of this political capital and expose himself to attacks that he, has given up too much, or he's appeasing the Ayatollahs or something like that. And there's just not space to do that. So he's keeping the pot boiling and trying to not let it simmer over. And the hope is that, if he gets reelected, he's going to be able to do the right thing and get this back on the right track.
Well, you have to hope. I mean, he's got nothing to, if he gets reelected, he's got nothing to lose because he can't run again. Why not do the right thing?
Well, I think because the right thing does involve, taking these steps that are opposed by Bibi Netanyahu, and I think actually having these talks with Iran, Israel is building some pretty significant opposition to that, domestically, and here in Washington, the pro-Israel crowd
maybe
is very opposed to it.
Sometimes when there's a big, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, as far as Obama, I think that there's going to be a calculation. Can he pull off the deal without damaging the Democratic Party's standing in the eyes of AIPAC and sort of the pro-Israel crowd?
I'm so sick of this already. I mean, in the olden days, when they had sailing ships made, that could easily go down in a storm, they would cut the anchor, so that the ship could float and adjust to the way that the storm was, and so they had more control over it. They cut the anchor. Maybe it's time for us to cut this anchor, I mean, the Israel is one little country, all other things aside, and I'm Jewish. Is one little country worth having, a world war over, nuclear weapons, tens of thousands of more dead Americans? I mean, enough is enough already. If they want to go to war with Iran, let them do it and take the consequences.
I probably would not. I would say that a true friendship. If there's a true friendship between the United States and Israel, part of that is actually being honest, and for Israel saying there are real decisions that have to be made here. We cannot sustain. We can't sustain this unsustainable relationship regarding the Middle East. And there needs to be sort of a moment where we say, you know what, we do need to figure out the Iran problem. It has to happen through diplomacy. And I'm sorry if the election cycle in Israel won't allow this to happen, but we're going to make these tough decisions. And long term, this is what is in the best interest of the United States, but also the best interest of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
But allowing, when your friend's drunk and you allow them to have the keys, you're not doing them any favors.
Obviously, talking is what needs to be done, but for all sorts of reasons, people don't talk. I mean, the only ones who seem to have made any gestures towards negotiating are the Iranians back in the spring. Well, anyhow, we're at the end of the program. Look at that. I really appreciate your sticking around like that, helping us out.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, okay. This is Jamal Abdi, A-B-D-I, and he's policy director of the National Iranian American Council. I think we know a lot more about sort of where things are at over there than we did before, if that makes a difference to people, and I hope it does. So if people want to find out more about your group and who they are, what they represent, what they're trying to achieve, there's a website for everything, right?
Yeah, so we have our website, niacouncil.org, NIAC Council, and we just launched a website called iranfacts.org. And the whole point of this website is to put the facts out there about the situation and hold media accountable so that we don't have a rerun of what happened with Iraq, where we had a lot of distortions and lies that got out that clouded the debate. So iranfact.org is where we're doing some of these grassroots accountability campaigns and getting the facts out there.
Well, if you can hold the media responsible, good for you. It'll be the first time in history. Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay. That's it for this hour. We are going to be back after the 6 o'clock hour with Sherry Hunkela, who is the vice presidential candidate for the Green Party, and she will be here after the 6 p.m. hour, after 6 p.m. news, and we'll talk to her for a little while. Then we'll take your calls. We can talk about this subject that we were talking about here, or issues she brings up about politics and about the Green Party and about the election. The Green Party is, of course, as well as the Libertarian Party, thrown off the debate stage by the Democrats and the Republicans. They don't want anybody to see them or hear them or know about them. And if that's democracy, I'm the bad. No, I can never say that word right. Let's have some music. Okay, we're back. This is Mike Fader, Sirius XM Left 127. Once again, I will remind you, now is as good a time as any will be. Paul Ryan going around being Paul Ryan, which is enough to say right there. Check out my YouTube video that I did called New Republican Prayer. And it's about Ayn Rand, and it's funny, and it's interesting, and it's well done. New Republican Prayer. If you want to get in touch with me, go to FederFiles.com, FederFiles.com, and you can sign up for my mailing list, which I'd like you to do, and you can get in touch with me. And right now we're going to speak to Sherry Hunkela. Am I saying your name right?
Yes, you are.
Okay, Sherry Hunkela, who is vice presidential candidate for the Green Party. Jill Stein's been on here a couple of times, and I'll tell people a little bit about your background.
I'm a formerly homeless mother of 2 children, and I believe I'm the first person that's ever ran for the highest office, also as a single mother. And I've been working for the last 25 years at helping families that are in foreclosure, helping folks that are hungry, helping folks that don't have access to health care, and all of the other basic necessities of life.
Now, you also, it says here, I'm looking at this bio material I got. In 2004, at the Republican National Convention, you were one of the leaders of a march of over 100,000 people. Is that correct?
I don't know if it was that many, but it was a lot.
That's what's on the bio, so you could, and it's,
yeah, I've definitely organized the largest marches of poor and homeless families in this country. And I've done it with the help of lots of other folks out there that are hurting and that have been invisible to mainstream media.
And last item, which is very interesting, is it says in 2011 you became the first woman to run for sheriff of Philadelphia and the first and only sheriff candidate nationwide pledging to stop home foreclosures by the big banks. I mean, what happened there in that run for sheriff of Philadelphia?
Well, the feds were investigating our current sheriff's office, and so it became even more important that I decided to run for Philadelphia sheriff, and I decided that why can't we have a sheriff that represents the people? And so I ran on a platform where I would refuse to throw families out of their homes if they were facing foreclosure. So I, of course, got tons of support from all of the families that were both at risk of losing their homes and then the families that were currently losing their homes.
Now, have you always been involved with the Green Party, or is this a recent thing?
No, this is pretty recent. I have to be honest. I was a supporter of Obama. I have a very racially mixed family, and we were really excited about having an African-American president in our country, and, didn't know very much about how corporate America supports our one-party system. And so we went out there and really pushed for Obama, and then like many other millions of other Americans right now have been very saddened to see, what's happening in this country. But it really doesn't come down to him as an individual. Both, Democrats and Republicans really have to answer to corporate America, so they're not really even free to make those kind of decisions.
There's a couple of questions I want to ask you about, current issues and things like that. But let's get the main obvious question out of the way, which, of course, Jill and you always have to put up with. But let's get it out of the way anyhow. It's becoming clearer and clearer, especially this week with that, videotape we all saw of Romney. It's coming clearer and clearer just how awful Romney and Ryan really are. And there are differences between these two candidates, but are there enough differences for people to vote for one or the other so that they, like, for instance, if people did vote for President Obama, people who were poor or in trouble with their mortgages, who might be foreclosed on, who are jobless, who don't want to be involved in any more wars, is it a better choice to vote for Obama than Romney? Or if they vote for you and Jill Stein, are they, in fact, possibly helping to elect somebody who is clearly bad for 90% of the rest of the people?
Well, first of all, Romney doesn't have a prayer anymore.
You think not, really?
He doesn't have a prayer at winning the presidency.
Except for the fact that, with voter registration fooling around, secretaries of state of voter suppression, people are estimating 3-4 million votes could be kicked off or stolen by the Republicans. Yes.
Our country is very familiar with voter fraud and stealing elections. We saw that with Gore losing the presidency. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the Greens that stole the election. I mean, it was, the election being stolen from Gore, and we as a country allowing that to go forward, not demanding that something different happen.
So you're saying that Romney's really going to lose, so no matter, even with the voter suppression and the vote theft that's going to go on inevitably, he's going to lose anyhow?
Yeah, I mean, I really see him as losing. But the thing is that you can't really spoil something that's already rotten. The majority of the folks that are out there in this country that are absolutely hurting, it doesn't really make much difference who becomes president of our country. We are all arguing right now about who has the better seat on the Titanic. But this thing is really going down. It's going down quickly. Most of our kids, and definitely in poor communities, they can't breathe anymore. Everybody has asthma. People suffer from other environmental issues. Our planet's at stake. Our kids, here in Philadelphia, I went to a meeting today. They're proposing the closing of 64 schools. And doing another rerun of what's happening in Chicago, basically the elimination of public education.
Right. Yeah.
And, we have some of the highest hunger rates. Our kids are sick. They don't have dentists. And the list goes on.
And you think if people voted for Obama and the Democrats, it wouldn't make any difference at all?
It might slow the process. But we're right now, like, as I said, we're on a Titanic. It's going down. Instead of us arguing about at what rate and who's got the best seat, we need to come together as a country and develop the kind of courage to build a raft and get the hell off the Titanic altogether. And that's what Jill and my campaign is about. It's about a campaign that's about courage, and it's about ensuring that we finally develop the kind of country and society that all of us really need to live in. Not because it's, some pie in the sky, wishy-washy,
right.
dream. It's absolutely possible because we have that kind of abundance and those resources. to make it happen.
You know, the debates are almost here. There will be, I think, 3 presidential debates? Is it 1 vice presidential debate? I think.
Yes.
Now, obviously, you and the Libertarian candidate are not going to be on the stage with them. Now, why is that if it's a democracy? Now, I don't know about the Libertarian candidate, Paul, is it Johnson? But you and Jill Stein have the potential for a couple of million votes. You're on the ballot in at least 40 states. Why are you not on the debate platform?
Well, because the Democrats and the Republicans hold the power of deciding who gets to be a part of the debates. And we can't even blame it on them. We have to blame it on us as, residents of this country that aren't informed of how, our electoral process works. We don't really have a democracy in this country, and people don't know about the Libertarian. They don't know about the Greens, and we have a responsibility to make sure that, from now until the weeks leading up, the few weeks we got left leading up into both the vice presidential and the presidential debate, that we demand democracy in this country. Whether or not folks support the Greens or the Libertarians, I know that the American people believe in democracy, and that if we're on, 40-some ballots in this country, we should be allowed to have the American people hear what we have to say.
This makes a lot of sense. I mean, are there Green Party candidates for governor and senator and Congress people? Are there a lot of them all over these different states?
There's growing numbers. We have the most amount of elected Greens in California, and we have, representation in all the various different states on, school boards and a variety of other kinds of levels. I definitely know after Jill and I's run for the White House, that we're definitely going to see an upsurge in Green candidates across the entire country. I know that, I've got a couple email accounts, and I'm averaging about 100 emails in both accounts every hour.
Wow.
And those are just hidden private emails. So not to mention what's happening to our national website and our national emails, and here in Pennsylvania, it's the Greens that have the highest growth of party membership since it was announced that I was running for vice president here in Pennsylvania.
At this point in the election, there are apparently, according to polls I've read, there's something like about I don't know what it's like 5% of the electorate, or up to 5% electorate, are undecided voters. How could anybody be undecided? What do you think about an undecided voter?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's more, most of the folks that I know are just wanting to sit this thing out because they don't know that there's another choice.
Oh, I see.
I don't know if it's about undecided. I think that
disgusted, maybe. So.
Yeah. It's more of a protest vote, and we're trying to encourage those folks to send a strong message to our elected officials and to our government that we're serious about taking back our democracy, and to go to the voting booth on Election Day and cast a vote for Jill and I.
We have some calls. Do you have the time to take a couple of calls?
I have the time for a couple calls.
Okay.
And then I have to, yeah.
Yeah, all right. We're listening to Cheri Honkala, and it's her name is spelled CheriHonkala, Honkala, and of course the website where the people can go to help out the party or to get more information is what? Why don't you give that first?
People could just bring up Jill Stein for president, and it'll bring up the website and hundreds of videos and other sites that are trying to push for us to have access to the ballot. Access to the debates.
Okay, let's go to Mike in New York. You're on. Go ahead, Mike.
Hello, and thank you for taking this call. I'm very interested in this. This lady is speaking about the Green Party and her desire to become president. I'm just
vice president. She's vice president.
Vice president. Well, everything that I hear that she's saying is really wonderful, and I really have no problem with it at all. I just don't understand what is the plan. How do you intend on doing it with $16 trillion in debt? And how are you going to make this happen? I mean, there has to be a tangible plan whereby we support these people that are unable to do that. I'm not speaking as a Republican or a Democrat. I'm just curious. If you want to save these people from foreclosures, typically you don't belong in a house that you cannot afford. So who's going to front that bill? How do you develop a technology that's not there?
Sherry, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. I just want to thank you for calling in, and I want to encourage folks to go to our website. Jill and I have a plan that's called the Green New Deal. It was, a take from FDR, and we intend to bring our troops home, bring the military home, and to bring those trillions of dollars home so that we can do things like turn the unemployment centers into employment centers so that we can begin to invest in our communities. We can fight for community land trust to ensure that homes are being taken care of by the community and they don't lose their homes to foreclosure. We want to make sure that we create green jobs so that we're able to put people back to work and, continue to, push forward the rebuilding of America. We refuse to proceed from this notion that there's not enough to go around or that there's scarcity.
So there is there's no need for austerity or making deals.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, both Romney and Obama are basically in a contest to talk about how do we tighten our belt. And it's not a question of tightening our belt. It's making sure that the banksters from Wall Street continue to no longer get away with robbing us, making sure that we have the right priorities in this country, which is to not get involved in other places of the world and, send our troops there to kill other people in the interest of oil when we could be using those resources here at home to rebuild America.
Let's take one more call. Let's go to Matt in Michigan.
Yeah, good evening. Very glad that you're on the show. First of all, I'd like to express my hope, since the major parties do all they can to exclude you from the forum, that you'd reach out to, shows like Colbert or Jon Stewart, perhaps, or maybe even David Letterman. I don't know if they'd actually give you a shot, but that'd be some kind of forum that, would give you more exposure, because unfortunately, I doubt most people have even heard of Jill Stein. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I'm voting for you. But
wonderful. Thank you.
Anyway,
yes, absolutely. We are doing everything we possibly can. We are definitely using social media. We're trying to utilize international media to put pressure on domestic media here. We've been on Comedy Central. Jill has been on a variety of different national television programs, but we need to continue to utilize alternative media and the internet, and really utilize social media to get the word out, because most of corporate media controlled that's out there is not going to allow Jill and I to be a part of this discussion either.
All right, let's. I'll tell you what. Let's take one more quick call, and I'll let you go. Would that be all right?
Sounds great.
Okay, Ron from Chicago, you're on.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay.
Pardon me, ma'am. I didn't catch your name. What's your name?
Sherry. Sherry Honkala.
I didn't catch your name.
Sherry Honkala.
Okay. I got one question. And that question is, like when you notice with the Obama presidency, during his first 4 years, he was met with a lot of resistance from the Republican Party, which I think stunted the growth of a lot of the different changes that Obama would have liked to make to the government to try to make things a little bit better as far as the economy, as far as jobs in relation to the economy, as it relates to the economy and things of that nature. What would be the Green Party's plan to actually deal with a lot of the obstructionists that are in Washington?
Well, I think that the key is that, first of all, we'd have to fire Wall Street, because I think as soon as we get money out of the elections and out of both the Democrats and the Republicans run for office, we're going to see a cleaner Washington, and we need to fill the halls of Congress with many more Greens in this country. So I think taking the money out of politics is the answer.
Okay, I know you've got to go, and I really appreciate your appearing here. And once
Love
again,
to come back.
Why don't you give the website one more time where people can actually send financial support and or get more information? Okay,
it's www.jillstein.org.
Okay.
And we really need folks' support, whether it's $5, $10, you name it. That's how we're going to guarantee that we ensure that the American people know that there's a choice. And I want to thank you for having us on.
Sure.
And we look forward on making the White House the greenhouse.
All right. Thank you very much.
Talk to you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Sherry Hunkala, who is running for vice president on the Green Party ticket. You know what? I think we'll take a break right now to get it out of the way so I don't forget about it later. And then when I come back, there's a question. Everybody who's listening now, stay tuned during this break because there's a really important question I want to ask you. I've been having people on from the Green Party. I've had Rocky Anderson on, who's running for president, too, from the Justice Party. I've been thumping on Obama for every good reason, as far as I'm concerned, during his administration, where he doesn't support freedom of speech, where he, supports the torture of Bradley Manning, his foreign policies, the fact that he's ripping up the Constitution, the fact that he's more interested in himself than he is in the American people. Yes, he's better than Romney. I'm not going to get to the whole thing right now, but you've heard my show. If you've been a regular listener, you know where I stand on these things. I'm, like Sherry, more interested in changing the whole structure, of which I believe that Mr. Obama and Mr. Romney, even though they are different and one is better than the other, that they are still part of a gigantic machine of money that has nobody's interests at heart. The things Mr. Romney said in that videotape that we all saw now, which are outrageous and show you where he really stands and how bad he is and his friends are, his friends and the people that pull the levers and run things, if the Democrats and Obama get in, we're still talking about people who are millionaires, who are friends with these people, who go golfing with them, that listen to them more than they listen to the rest of us, who still declare wars and kill people all by themselves, who still rip up the Constitution. It's the whole structure. It's who owns the place that has to be changed. Now, based on all that and the fact that I've hosted people from the Green Party, there's a really important question, and I've gotten a lot of attacks from people about my support for this kind of thing, considering what an important election is, et cetera. When I come back, I'm going to ask you all a question. I'll repeat a little of this, and I'll ask you a question. And I want to get a lot of phone calls on this because it's an important question. So let's go to a break, and we'll come back.
Ed Schultz on Sirius XM Left.
They don't give a damn about the middle class. What they want to do is they want to get labor to the point where they're begging to come into work for damn near nothing because there's nothing else out there. And the way to get there, the way to start that ball rolling, is to make sure that you destroy collective bargaining, make sure that you destroy unions, that you depress the workers as far as you possibly can.
The Ed Schultz Show, weekdays at noon East, 9 West, on Sirius XM Left, 127.
I believe I can do anything. So when it came to learning a new language, I knew I had to do it the way I learn. No books, no memorizing or translating. I wanted to learn the same way I learned my first language, naturally. That's why I chose Rosetta Stone.
Rosetta Stone invites you to be a part of its biggest language learning event in history. Because in 2012, we want to help 3 million people learn a new language. That's why we're going to give you an absolutely free demo of our language immersion technology. To participate in this free nationwide event, just call 1-800-508-4929.
Si yo puedo hacerlo, usted puede hacerlo. If I can do it, you can do it.
To participate in this free nationwide event, call now for your free demo from Rosetta Stone. Call 1-800-508-4929. That's 1-800-508-4929.
Looking for a hotel deal? I'm Bob Diener, president of GetARoom.com, and I found some great deals for you in some of the most popular destinations in the country. Like 25% off the charming Bella Claire Hotel in New York City from $141 a night. And in Las Vegas, we're offering the Luxury Suite Signature at MGM Grand from $75 a night. In South Beach, we're offering the Chesterfield Hotel from $78 a night, including free Wi-Fi and free airport pickup. 50% off the Downtown Disney Wyndham Lake Buena Vista Hotel in Orlando. These are just a few of the great deals available now on GetARoom.com. So go to GetARoom.com and then call us, and we'll get you even a lower rate by phone. Ask for our unpublished rate program. We typically offer 10 to 20% off, the lowest rate you can find anywhere online. Go to GetARoom.com and then call us and get even a better deal.
GetARoom.com, GetARoom.com.
Extremely Southern, undeniably Texan, and 100% American. ZZ Top, celebrating the release of ZZ Top's 15th studio album, La Futura. Featuring new tracks and an exclusive concert event. ZZ Top, recorded live at New York's Beacon Theater. Classic Rewind's La Futura Weekend starts Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on Classic Rewind, Sirius XM 25.
Sirius XM Left.
We're contending with these big forces, and so yes, I'm concerned about money.
Your voices, your stories. Sirius XM Left, 127.
Okay, we're back. This is Mike Fader on Sirius XM Left 127. If you've listened to this program, I've been on for 8 years on this station right now. And when I first came on here, it was 2004. It was right before the presidential election in 2004 that Bush and his pals managed to steal. This time they stole it in Ohio, where the Secretary of State was Ken Blackwell, who is a corrupt right-wing official who miscounted the votes and fucked around so that Ohio swung instead of Florida this time. And Florida was still stealing votes, basically denying the votes of people who would vote for Obama, absentee ballots from some people, students, a lot of black people thrown off the rolls, same old stuff. The Republicans, and also this time around, they've refined and expanded and even, very much more well-funded their voter theft efforts. So even though Romney is down, probably looks like he's in bad shape unless something radical changes. He's definitely, way back in the polls right now. It's his own fault, and because people finally see exactly who he is and people see who Ryan is. However, I've been on here 8 years, and I talked about when Bush was around, who could be a worse war criminal than Bush, Cheney, Condoleezza Rice, Powell, all those people? They belong in jail for the rest of their natural lives. I should say unnatural lives, right? And I pounded on them for what they did, how they wasted our money, how they treated us like shit, how they had no regard for the average person, how they started wars they shouldn't have started. Then when Obama came in, just like everybody else, I voted for him. I voted for him in 2008. I said, well, this is an amazing thing, right? This is a historical moment, hope and change. Didn't see much hope and change. I don't much have much hope, and I didn't see very much change. Yes, the Republican Party, during the 4 years that he's been in power, has acted in no way like any other political party at a national level has ever acted before, as far as I can tell from history. They declared from the very second he got elected they wouldn't cooperate with him. Meanwhile, he does things all on his own. The expansion of executive power, the chasing of whistleblowers, the destruction of freedom of speech and civil rights and our ability to function in a democratic society has been pushed by Obama even more than George Bush in some particular ways. And now he's got a personal kill list. And his embracing the army is outrageous, right? Now, he's done all kinds of things, which I'm not going to get into a big thing about. But I feel like it's my job, and I've said this before, it's my job not to be an Obama supporter. This is not MSNBC, which is basically though they are far more intelligent than anybody at Fox News, for instance. And I like watching them, and I think their hearts are in the right place. You will never hear them say one single word about Obama's incredible incursions on our rights and liberties as Americans. His use of money to kill people all over the place, his support of the NSA and spying on Americans, his chasing of whistleblowers, his allowing people like Bradley Manning to be tortured and saying it's just fine with him. I won't go down the whole list. He is not the kind of person I would ever vote for again. I am personally going to vote for Jill Stein as president. I push these things. I feel, again, it's my job, no matter who's in power. I'll point out the differences. He is better than Romney, right? But he's still part of a larger corporate military machine, which is taking us down the road to fascism and to self-destruction and suicide. And I cannot support him. And I will go after the President of the United States, no matter who he is, no matter what color he is, what party he's in, no matter if he smiles, whether he's a nice guy or a bad guy or he's full of shit like Romney. I will go after them. I'm not going to do that every minute, right? I'm not live my life in a spirit of rebellion. I applaud Mr. Obama for the Ledbetter law, for trying at least once in a while to put himself in front of the corporate oil machine and, hesitating on the Keystone Pipeline, which he finally did sort of give in on, Arctic drilling, which he gave in on. He's trying his best, and he's got a party, the Republican Party, who actually are like a bunch of frozen, petrified, vicious dinosaurs, that are there, who are not moving 1 inch, who just want to get rid of him, basically because he's black and because they imagine, or they like to think, people think he's a socialist. I mean, the idea that Obama is a socialist is beyond, it's not even funny. It's just sad that anybody would even think that. I mean, he's the furthest thing from a socialist. His best friend in the world, apparently he plays golf with all the time, is a major executive, one of the highest executives in a Swiss bank, an international Swiss bank, who is responsible for this gigantic LIBOR scandal where they were setting the rates for everything in the world. This is Obama's pals, right? So here I am. I feel like it's my job as your representative on the air here, in a way, to provide the most intelligent people to come on here who are the fairest, who know what the facts are, who present you with information you won't get anywhere else, and to be critical. I believe it's my job as an American political, citizen and somebody who's got a radio show to point out where our president, who we vote for, is not only not representing the interests of the common person or the mass of people, but is going against their interests and doing things on his own as if he were a dictator. So that's my job. Bush, Obama, I'm going to point to that. It doesn't matter. But I've been on the air almost 35 years, and I have never in 35 years, and I've said a lot of provocative or difficult things to hear, I have never received so many angry emails and calls from people. In the old days, it used to be letters, angry emails and calls, people telling me, if I keep doing this and the Green Party gets 2 million votes and Obama loses in swing states or loses the popular vote, if he loses the Electoral College, it'll be my fault. Right? People, if I urge people and keep pushing the Green Party on people, it'll be my fault. People like me will destroy America because we promoted the Green Party. So here's what I want to say. My experience with the callers to this program is that about, I'd guess, around 75 to 80% of the people who call this program either identify themselves as independents or seem as if they are very politically aware or astute. They know their own minds. So here's my question for you. How many of you, and I need to get calls. I want to get a lot of calls about this. We have about 20 minutes till the end of this hour, and we can extend it into the next hour too. How many people who are listening to me are changing their votes from Obama to the Green Party because of something I'm saying or have said? In other words, how much influence am I having on your vote? When you go to vote this November for senator, governor, congressperson, especially for president, are you going to vote because I said something here or I had guests on who represented a different point of view, or are you going to make up your own mind? How much do you rely on me for determining how you're going to vote? That's what I want to know, because sometimes I respond to people who write me these emails and say, if you should be ashamed of yourself. If people like you keep pushing the Green Party and Obama loses because of that, you will have elected Romney. It'll be your fault. Oh, really? Really? Do I have that much influence? Do you know that Rush Limbaugh, who has, God, what has he got, 30 million listeners? When he was pushing in 2010 and not 2000, in 2008, when he was pushing against Obama and the Democratic Party, and Rush Limbaugh has this huge listenership, right? That somebody did a statistical analysis, and in particular states even that he went after, like Congress races, congressional races, and senatorial races, they determined that Rush Limbaugh had very little effect on people. So, am I to blame, really, or are you making up your own mind about who to vote for? How much are people like me, and I'm presenting my opinions that I believe in honestly, and I have experts on here that I believe are decent, intelligent people. That's what I do here. But I want to know what you think. Are you going to change your vote because of what I said? And I'm not trying to wriggle out of it. If I convince somebody because of something I say or guests that come on here, well, that's okay. That's partially what I intend to do. I don't want to be disingenuous or naive about it. But how many people are going to actually change their vote because of something I say? How much influence do I have on this? Now, maybe I don't want to find out that I have none at all, but I'm asking you honestly. You're the audience. You pay a subscription to be on, to listen to Sirius. So in a way, this is like your vote on this issue. All right. Okay. Let's take some calls. Let's and call up if you can't get on. Just if it's busy, you can call. We got a bunch of calls. You pick.
Let's start from the top.
Okay, Robert from Knoxville, you're on the air.
Thank you, Mike. I'll tell you just as straight as I can. I'm a 62-year-old white male, lifelong Democrat. For the first time, I'll be voting for a third-party candidate. That will be Jill Stein. You have had some effect on that, but I do a lot of watching of various news sources, everything from Free Speech TV to Link TV to RT. I try to watch Fox, but I find it so absolutely insulting that I can't watch it. The delivery,
yeah. It's difficult for a grown person to really watch that, unless you like cartoons.
Now, right. At some point in your life, you have to decide that you're not going to vote any longer for the lesser of two evils. You've got to vote your conscience. One particular thing in my case that tends to sway me is I will never forgive Barack Obama for not letting his Justice Department delve into the war crimes committed by the previous administration.
Well, that was his first and worst mistake. And
yes, that was a big mistake. Big mistake to me. He's impressed. You and I've talked to you about this once before. I believe he's impressed by power. I believe he's impressed by the military. The last time I spoke to you, he just had a $30,000 a plate dinner with someone. This week he's topped that. I believe it was $40,000 or $45,000 with Jay-Z and Beyonce. So Barack's living the high life. He's not an everyman's everyman anymore. He does at least come from a background where he has had to live in the real world. Mitt Romney is an absolute, I feel sorry for the guy because he has no basis. He's not based in reality.
No, he's not.
He doesn't know what real life is. But I don't want to take up too much time. I do find, I did appreciate you having on the vice presidential candidate there. And I will be voting third party. That is in part from what I've heard on your show. But no, you haven't swayed my vote. I've done some research. I've looked at it. I can no longer vote for the lesser of two evils.
Well, listen, Robert, I really appreciate your call. And I know I've spoken to you before, and I always do appreciate it when you call. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mike.
Okay, Chuck from Tennessee, you're on the radio.
Hi, Mike. I'm going to be voting for Obama. And let me explain why. I'm 52 years old, just to let you know. I'm a lifelong Democrat also. I believe that the Republicans are not so much worried about the presidential election. That's why they put Romney in there. They didn't really want to win. I think they want to have a scapegoat for the policies they're going to be trying to push through the next 4 years by shoring up their control of the House and getting control of the Senate. And if
well, but it doesn't. That doesn't really. That doesn't make so much sense in a way because people really do vote from the top down, and if they have a candidate who is so bad and might be such a big loser, it will affect. And you could see this. All the Republican people who are running for governor and senator are not even saying his name anymore. They're trying to distance themselves from him. So why would they pick a candidate who's? Why would they pick a candidate? Why would they pick a candidate? I guess you can't hear me, right?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Why would they pick a candidate, as you're saying, that's so bad on purpose if it affects the rest of the down ticket?
I don't think they accurately estimated how bad he really was.
Yeah, you know, I hate to say this, but, you know, your signal, if you could call back maybe, the signal is so bad we're actually not able to hear you well. I apologize, but if you can call back. Let's go to Bob from Tennessee.
This is a Tennessee day, huh?
I guess so, yeah.
Well, shout out to Robert. Same with me, Mike. I'm voting Green Party. I've got more than a decade on Robert. It was Johnson. I voted for Johnson against Goldwater, and Johnson gave us the Vietnam War, full blown. Voted for Obama. He puts Rahm Emanuel and the banksters in control. I can't go that way anymore. I must say, though, it's not because of you and your show. It's something that I came to on my own. I have been a supporter of the Green Party on the lower tickets, but I'm going the high road this year.
Okay. I appreciate your calling. I mean, I really do want to find out what people think here because I do suspect that most of the people who listen to me are in your position and, in Robert's position. I mean, I think most of the people make up their own minds, and they're not going to get swayed by something I'm saying. And basically what's happening is people are voting for the Green Party because they are disgusted with this endless lesser of two evils. So let's move on to another call. Let's go to Bill from Dallas.
Good afternoon.
Hey.
I'm voting for Mr. Obama, and the reason why, we got so many things at stake in this election coming up, and votes taken away. If they're taken away from him, we're going to end up with Romney in default. And I think the Green Party is something that is going to be great in the future. It's probably coming on now, but it just doesn't have enough structure.
Yeah, but here's the thing: if people always think they're going to be better in the future, then they don't vote for them in the present. There's no future for somebody if people don't give them support in the present.
Yeah, but on the same token, if Romney and Ryan get in, it won't even be a government. It won't be nothing. The people are going to be worse off than they ever will be if they get in and be able to pass that program.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that, it's good. I like their ideas, but I just don't think I don't need to make a protest vote this year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for calling. Let's go to Dan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sure. Let's go to Dan in Toledo.
Yeah, hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
I think I'll be voting for Obama, and definitely for a couple of reasons. The first one would be the Health Care Act. I think that's the first major step we're going to have towards a national health care system, single payer. It's got a long ways to go, but if it gets repealed, it may never happen, at least not in our life.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is the next president's going to be picking probably at least 2 Supreme Court justices. And I definitely don't want to see it go along the conservative lines again. There's been so much damage done already.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the third and most important one is to view Romney in a simplistic term. He's a sociopath, and he basically will use people for whatever he wants. And the biggest use he's going to have is of our military. And my son just graduated boot camp to become a Marine.
Oh, man.
Now, that was his choice to do, and it's something he's wanted to do ever since he's 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't necessarily to be Romney's choice to say, hey, now we're going into Syria, now we're going on Iran. He'll be spinning the wheel of war in the Oval Office deciding what the next country U.S. intervention is going to be in.
Well, when it comes to that, I mean, I hear you on everything else, and what can I say? I mean, I wanted your opinion, so I've gotten your opinion. But when it comes to where your son gets sent as a Marine and what war we're in, I mean, don't look to Mr. Obama to be Mr. Peaceful.
No, not at all. I have no disillusions about that either. We should have been out of Afghanistan a long time ago. That should have been his first act right after getting out of Iraq, not just a year ago. So he definitely uses the military as well, but Romney, he'll use it without conscience whatsoever. He just doesn't care about the average person, and it shows in every facet of his life.
No, that's pretty clear. Yeah.
Anything else, that's just a scary way to go.
All right. Yeah. All right.
If you convince anyone to vote any other way, though, that's everybody else's choice, and the discussion you're bringing up is a great discussion. So there should be no problem with whoever you convince to vote your way or to go with your opinion or whatever. That's what you're here for, and you do a great job of it.
Well, yeah, I'm just basically here almost sort of like taking a poll. I want to, because I'm hearing everybody tell me all the time, and believe me, I'm getting lots of emails, and some people are almost enraged. They're blaming me. But my attitude is that the people who listen to me, there's an old adage on the radio that people on radio don't usually talk about, but it's not because it's a secret or anything, but basically here's the basic rule of talk radio anyhow. Here's the basic rule of talk radio. What you put out is what you get back. And I try to put out intelligent, reasonable, passionate information, and I feel like I'm getting back those kinds of listeners. And those are the kinds of people that make up their own minds. And I just wanted to see, what the deal was. Let me move on to another call.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dan. Let's go to Nick in North Carolina.
How you doing, Mike? What's going on with you, my man?
Hey.
I've been a big fan of yours for a while, man, and I'm just like this. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't want to vote for either President Obama or Romney because I think they're just so fucking worse, man. Mm-hmm. But it's like this. My state, I live in North Carolina. I don't have a fucking choice. I have to vote for President Obama. Even though I want to vote for Rocky or Jill on the third-party ballot, and I'm so for third parties, it's not even funny.
Is North Carolina kind of a toss-up state?
Yeah.
Okay.
It really is, and it's just I don't have a choice. I don't want to vote for President Obama or Romney because they're fucking worse for the country. But what other fucking choice do I have, man? You have to understand this. I'm in a wheelchair, I have cerebral palsy, and every day I have to fight for everything that I get. Shit is not easy for me. I don't trust either party because at the end of the day, what is either party going to do for my family? What is either party going to do for people out here? People are suffering. People are dying right now. All this shit is going on right now. I mean, we're not taking care of the earth. We're not taking care of this. We're not taking care of that, and it pisses me off, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how can we fix this shit?
Well, not by voting for one of two people who are basically friends of bankers. That's not going to do it.
And honestly, Mike, I agree with you, and I don't want to vote for either of them.
But in your state, you're saying as a toss-up state, you're going to have to.
Yeah, I'm going to have to because I think in my state, if I'm not mistaken, to be a third party, and I was told this by the guy I'm dealing with, because I'm dealing with somebody with the Justice Party down here, you have to have so many signatures to be on the ballot. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to get on the ballot.
Well, the Democrats and the Republicans conspire, against people getting on the ballot. So they're the ones who set up these rules. That's why they're keeping everybody off the debate stage.
I agree. Yeah? I agree. But you also have to look at this. You also have to look at this voter suppression and this voter intimidation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like I said, man. I'm sick of both parties. Do not get it twisted. I'm with you. I'm with you 100%.
I hear you. I hear you.
And I stand with you. And I will continue. And I also listen to you on the Progressive Radio Network.
Okay.
So I'm a big fan of yours.
Oh, I appreciate that.
So
you're not.
Don't get it twisted. I am not. As of this year, I am not a Democrat anymore. I was a Democrat for 13 years. Not anymore. Even though I agree with the Democrats on 85% on what they're talking about. As far as the gay rights thing and other stuff. But as far as everything else, I don't.
All right,
You
listen.
know, and I'm just sick of this shit. I'm sick of this corporate bullshit, and I'm sick of everything that's going on to people, man. 'Cause people need to be taken care of, and stuff is going on, man. We need to fix a lot of stuff right now.
Let me.
It's not a good situation.
All right, I appreciate your calling, and I'm gonna move on. Take another call from somebody else.
All right, Mike, take it easy.
All right, Nick. Joy from California, you're on.
Yes, I want to affirm what the previous caller said. I'm with him. There's a lot of people suffering and dying, and we don't hear the Democratic Party really mentioning the poor and those who are in poverty very much at all. So I'm voting my conscience, and I just want to affirm you, Mike Fader. I look forward to you every single week. I plan my day around you on Saturday because I'm voting my conscience, and I'm voting for the Green Party, and I'm voting for life on Earth.
All right, thank you, Joy. I appreciate your calling. We're going to take one more call. Now, we're going to continue. We can continue this conversation, and I hope you want to do this after the 7 o'clock news. But let's take one or two more calls. Let's go to Dale in Colorado.
Hello, how are you?
Hey.
I am going to vote for Jill Stein, and whether it's because of you or not is a toss-up. You know, with 50 cents on the dollar as a woman all my life and the recession on top of it, I don't really have a lot of money for access to information. I get about 2 hours a month on the Internet. If it hadn't been for you, I would not know about Jill Stein.
Interesting.
However, during my limited time on the Internet, I looked up her platform. So I do my research. I did have a computer during the dial-up era. Information is not easy to get. I have that against left radio. They don't talk about Jill Stein.
You know what? I hate to admit this, but I don't really listen to my colleagues here as much as I should. I listen once in a while, but I mean, do the rest of the people on this station have her on or talk about the Green Party?
Only Dave Marsh.
Oh, interesting.
On Live from the Land of Hope and Dreams. No, they do not, and I feel that is manipulative.
Well, I mean, it's obviously how they feel about it. Nobody's paying them from the Democratic Party, I could tell you that, you know.
Well, they're worried about the Supreme Court, which is my next point.
Yeah.
Do we have time for that?
Yes.
The Supreme Court is already ruined. So why would I vote for a Democrat? The Democrats approved these right-wingers. They sent them on through. So I'm not pleased about that. And I hope everybody will read Chomsky.
Okay. All right. Thanks for calling. Let's go to. We'll take one more call. We only have about a minute left. Cheryl from Tennessee. You're on. Another Tennessean.
Hi, Mike.
Hi. You're on.
I just kind of think that this election is way too close to spend a vote on a third party. It's just going to take away from Obama, and we really need Obama a whole lot more than we need Romney, even though, neither of them are perfect.
Okay. All right. I appreciate the call.
Thanks.
That's all the time I have for calls in this hour because we're right up against the end of the hour, and if I took a call now, you wouldn't have enough time. But we will do this again afterwards. I'm sure a lot of you want to make your point and talk about. I mean, the election is almost upon us, and I'm interested to hear how much effect I'm having because I know. Actually, I do know. I'm being a little bit. Used that word before. I love using this word. It's such a great word. Disingenuous. Let's all say it together. One of my favorite words. Disingenuous. Yeah, I know. I'm probably more left than anybody else on the left channel. Since Lynn's not here. But I am more left than anybody else on the left channel, and I'm not boasting about it. I'm just saying that's a matter of fact from what I've heard and from what I can tell. And I do feel that people don't get enough information about other parties. There's not just two parties. There's other things. There's other ways of voting and having a government. There's a parliamentary system. This two-party system of ours is lockjaw. It's political and corporate lockjaw. So we'll take more calls after the 7 o'clock news, and you can tell me how you feel, who you're voting for. It's like an informal poll here tonight on this show, and whether or not I've influenced you or not. And if I haven't influenced enough people, I'm going to go home, and I'm going to become one of those people who works at home, makes $13,000 a week, and I'm not coming in here anymore.
Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up.
Okay, we're back. So, this is Mike Fader, Sirius XM Left 127. It may be that our XM listeners are not able to listen to the final hour here. Sometimes what happens is there are so many sports programs on because it's the fall and all the college football and everything else that they take the last hour of this program and use it for sports broadcasts, which in the middle of an election like this is quite extraordinary as far as I'm concerned. However, that is their policy. Wait a minute. Is there somebody listening from XN? Maybe somebody who couldn't hear. I don't know. I don't really know if that's the case, so I'm not rushing to judgment, but it does happen sometimes. Let us go to, now, let me repeat the question here. Now, stay on the line if you're on the line, and we'll get to you. Well, first, one thing, and then we'll go back to the question. I just want to get this in before we go on and take more calls about this. The election's coming up, and I do want to hear from you about these this third-party thing and about Obama and Romney and Jill Stein. But I just want to make this one comment. Every single week, you know and I know that you pick up your local newspaper, or you may not see this on TV because the corporate media doesn't want you to see this generally, but if you have a decent newspaper or you check into any website that you get your information from, every week you're going to find out that the Americans, usually the Americans, sometimes the British, but almost always the Americans, launched a missile, a drone strike, or bombed with bombers or used artillery to blow up insurgents or terrorists. And more than half the time, it turns out that they are innocent men, women, and children. There's a reason why half the world hates our guts and wants to kill us. It's a long history, which I'm not going to go into. But right now, the best example is that we have killed a couple of thousand people who are not combatants in Iraq and Afghanistan over the last couple of years, especially in Afghanistan. And we keep apologizing for it, but we keep doing it. And here's the latest one. This is published on September 16th, which is only a few days ago. NATO airstrike in Afghanistan kills 8 women. Now think of this as a piece of information, but also symbolic of our entire war over there, or tenure, or what we're doing there at all in the first place. NATO airstrike in Afghanistan kills 8 women. Protecting Afghan lives is the cornerstone of our mission, said International Air Force NATO asshole. A NATO airstrike has killed at least 8 women and girls and injured at least 7 other females in the eastern province of Laghman while they were collecting firewood on Sunday, Afghan officials say. Villagers from the province brought the bodies to the provincial capital of Medarlam, the Associated Press reports. 7 injured females were also brought to the hospital, some as young as 10 years old, according to news agencies. The BBC reports that NATO acknowledged that civilians were killed in the strike. And here is Major Adam Wojak, a spokesman for the International Occupation Force. Unfortunately, we have become aware of possible NATO-caused civilian casualties as a result of this strike, numbering 5 to 8 Afghans, he said, which is a lie, of course. It was more. We offer our sincerest condolences to the affected community and family members, as well as to the Afghan people concerning this tragic loss of life, said Wojak. The Associated Press adds that another spokesperson for the international military in Afghanistan, Jamie Graybeal, was saddened by the civilian collateral damage. And then he says, protecting Afghan lives is the cornerstone of our mission, and it saddens us when we learn that our action might have unintentionally harmed civilians. The whole fucking war, you fucking asshole, is there injuring innocent civilians. But you're too stupid to understand that, Mr. Graybeal. Now, Auckland, New Zealand. The 33,000 additional U.S. troops that President Barack Obama ordered to Afghanistan to tamp down the Taliban attacks nearly 2 years ago have now left the country. But a new wave of deadly insider attacks and reassessment of how NATO troops partner with Afghans has raised the question about how well the military strategy is working. A 2-year-old child, a dead dog in the road, could pick up any newspaper or look at TV or know by telepathy or common sense that this has been bullshit since the beginning. And this president, to show he was tougher because he gets hard because when he's around uniforms or whatever his problem is, sent 33,000 troops. That's like $100 billion over the last couple of years. So now we've withdrawn them. And as you can tell, as anybody can tell, as I said, anybody, you don't have to be informed or into the news. Anybody can read this. An 8th grader, a 6th grader, a 3rd grader could see that there are more and more and more violent, dangerous, and deadly attacks by the Taliban. The other day, at one of the major, most strongly defended NATO bases, let's use the word American bases in Afghanistan, the Taliban managed to break through a wall and blow up $200 million worth of airplanes, fighter bombers. They destroyed 8 fighter bombers on the ground. Now, how could that possibly happen? Because we were successful. We beat them. The surge worked. This is bullshit on the scale of the Wizard of Oz. This is insane, vile crap. The Taliban is beaten. We have achieved our aims. And listen to this. U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta announced on Friday that the troops had come out, these are the surge troops, declaring that the surge had accomplished its mission. And what the fuck, Leon, is the mission if we've accomplished it? Why don't you tell that to the troops who we sent there who have brain injuries and PTSD and are missing legs and arms? They might think that the mission wasn't accomplished. And what mission is that? Maybe we should tell the federal employees who are just trying to get by, who have had their salaries frozen for the last couple of years because the federal government doesn't have enough money, or enough money to give to the EPA to provide inspectors so that we don't get poisoned to death by oil and gas companies, or enough money to hire people in the Justice Department so they can investigate all this voter fraud from the Republicans and from the Republican legislatures and governors. But there's not enough Justice Department people to go after them. Maybe we could tell that to all the teachers and everybody else who's been laid off in all the cities all over the country, that there's not enough money to go around. But we spent $100 billion on this surge. And this guy Panetta, this son of a bitch motherfucker Panetta, says that we've accomplished our mission. Let him go over to Afghanistan and drop him himself personally, without any guards or Marines or anybody around him, into one of the villages, into the village where 12 women and girls were blown up by American fighter bomber strikes when they were gathering firewood. And they may have some questions about whether our mission was accomplished and what the fuck our mission was. Maybe if our mission was to borrow another $100 billion from the Chinese, who are not our friends, maybe we have accomplished our mission. That's some fucking mission we accomplished. So fuck them. That's what makes me angry about Obama. That's his administration. It's his surge. It's his Secretary of Defense. It's bullshit. It's murder. And that's only one reason I'm not voting for him. Okay, back to the question. I had to do that. I feel better every week if I do that, if I get that kind of stuff out of my system, because it drives me crazy. For him to say we've accomplished our mission over there, 5 days ago, the Taliban broke into the most heavily defended military base outside of Kabul and blew up $200 million worth of military equipment, including aircraft. That's some accomplishment. We really beat those guys. We got them all right. Jesus Christ. How many people in this country served over there that brains don't work right anymore, who have brain injuries, PTSD? The unemployment rate is over 10% for nationwide for veterans. Do they feel like our mission? What was our mission over there? What is our mission over there? What is this, macho boasting in the schoolyard while people die? We're killing girls? We're blowing up women? What is our mission over there? Makes me sick to my stomach. All right, so here's the question again. Been here 8 years now on Sirius. Been on other radio stations, total of almost 35 years now. I always feel, and I don't care who the president is, what I see from where I'm sitting is, yeah, one is definitely sometimes better than the other. One is generally, the best way to describe it, is less vicious and less evil than the other one. They are both, though, if you look at a chart and a graph, clearly anybody can see that over the last 40 or 50 years, there's been an increase in executive power to the point where it's clearly almost approaching fascism. The military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned about, and he would know better than almost anybody, in 1960, when he was leaving office. Of course, it's good for him to say that when he's leaving office, not when he was entering office. It's easier to do that. That was 52 years ago, roughly, 53 years ago he made that speech. It's been getting worse all the time. Now it's gotten to the point where we're in a state of permanent war. The president can and has requested bills, signed them into law, where he can declare anybody a terrorist anytime he wants and have you jailed or have you killed, and he can get away with it. He is the commander-in-chief. Executive power has gone completely out of control. We're way down the road to fascism. He has not indicted anybody who's a war criminal and instead has become one himself. Now, because of this and many, many other things, which I have talked about for many years, I feel it's like my job to get on here. I don't represent the Democratic Party. I don't represent any political party particularly. I see one as a lot worse than the other. But still, I think they're both in the same general corporate military machine, and they are not helping, as one of our callers and many of my callers are saying all the time. They are not helping the average person. People are still being foreclosed on by gangsters and criminals who shouldn't have got away with it. No banker has gone to jail under Obama. He shows up as many, $50,000 and $40,000 plate dinners as Romney ever did. He is relying more and more and more on larger donors as the campaign goes on. I can refer you to articles about that if you want to get in touch with me. There is no end to this. He is building National Security Administration spying centers that cost billions of our dollars, our tax dollars, which could go towards solar energy, to hiring back teachers, cops, paying people's pensions, given to the state so they can afford to pay pensions to retired old cops, firemen, and teachers. They just cut their pensions off in places in Mississippi and Alabama. This guy is no good. And so I have people on. I want to expand the structure of American democracy. My goal, my aim, my desire, that we have more almost of a parliamentary system. We're not locked into these two, to choosing between one of two rich guys or one of two parties, both of whom are either corrupt or millionaires, both of the parties, all of whom approve these Patriot Acts and everything else that turns the president into a dictator. So that's why I have Jill Stein on. That's why I have Rocky Anderson on. That's why I do this. I believe we need to expand our democracy. We're going completely in another direction. People are getting killed. People are being thrown out of their houses, and nobody goes to jail. Nobody pays for it. Military expands, and nobody can do a damn thing about it. Democrat, Republican, who gives a shit? You go vote and see what good it does you. So I have people on, as long as we are considering the fact that a vote is still perhaps worth something, like Jill Stein. So here's the question again. Sorry. How many people listening to me, and you know obviously what I've been talking about and how I have these people on, these third-party people, how many people listening to me are actually going to vote for a third party, and perhaps the third party people are claiming could cause Obama to lose? How many people are going to vote for a third party or not vote for Obama or turn out to vote for him because of my influence? It's my contention, as I mentioned before, that people can make up their own minds, that most of the people who call me and write me emails, which people do all the time. By the way, if you want to write me an email, it's FederFiles, FederFiles.com, FederFiles.com. Want to write me an email? I'll engage with you on that too. I get dozens every day, so that's fine with me. I can answer them all. So I think people make up their own minds. People are accusing me of perhaps causing Obama to lose the election. I wished I had that many listeners. Of course, I don't. But even if I did, I believe people who listen to me because of the way I run my show and the way I look at the world are people who have their own minds. They can make their own choices, and they do make their own choices. They don't just listen to somebody on the radio and say, oh, he said to vote for him, and I think he should, I think I'm going to do it because he said so. People don't even do that who listen to Rush Limbaugh, Mr. Small Penis. They don't even do that with him. All right, let's get your calls, 866-997-4748. We'll go to Danny from Denver.
Oh, hello.
Hey, you're on.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Hey.
And, I understand your passion, but, as a black man, I most definitely understand what it is to vote for the lesser of two evils. That's something, if you want to call it that, that's something we've been doing for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And that being said, I remember, when I went to bed the night George Bush won the election, and I said to myself, this country would never, ever, ever be the same. And with that in mind, there's no way but this election, and the way I look at it, regardless of what you say and how you feel about Obama, he has done some good things. There's a lot I disagree with, but there's no way I will sacrifice my vote for a third party.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, it's too important right now, looking at who we got, who in my mind is another George Bush reincarnated, maybe even worse. I understand, Obama, continuing the war, and so forth, and, many of the other things, but, I just can't do that. I look at it, and I make my judgment, and...
So you see, but you make your own judgments. For instance, whoever you listen to on a radio, whatever newspaper you read, you weigh it all, and then you decide who to vote for. Nobody's actually saying vote for this person, and you sort of walk like a zombie and vote to the voting booth and vote for who you're told for, right?
No, that's just like someone saying when somebody, like Romney, what he said in that one meeting, that if he was born in Mexico,
yeah,
he would get more votes. That's so insane. I don't care how black President Obama is. That's not why I voted for him. There are plenty of African Americans I wouldn't vote for if they paid me. You know what I mean? So I don't follow that. So no, I weigh it all. And I know it's not perfect, but I look at, the situation and where we are today, and I can't see myself doing that. That's just where I am.
No, I hear you. All right. Thanks for calling.
All right.
Okay, Danny. Let's go to Joe in San Diego. You there?
Hello, how are you?
Hey, you got to speak up a little bit.
How are you doing?
Okay, you're on the air.
I'm not going to vote for anybody.
And why is that?
Definitely anybody.
Why is that?
I don't trust the voting machines. Those voting machines are an abomination. They better get those voting machines fixed. Those touch screen voting machines are bogus. Anybody who votes on them is crazy. Just read Loser Take All by Mark Crispin Miller and the rest of them, and you'll understand why you shouldn't vote at all. And as for Obama, he's a murderer, okay? He's definitely a murderer with those drones, and I don't understand why people of African American descent, why they would want to vote for a murderer like that, okay? Not only is he a murderer, but he's deceitful. And not only that, he just doesn't cut it. Okay, he polluted the Gulf of Mexico, letting those BP crooks drill there with over 100 violations.
So wait, so let me ask you this: do you see a difference between him and Romney?
Very little difference. It's very marginal.
All right. All right. Thanks for calling. Let's go to Rita from New Jersey.
How you doing?
Hey.
There's one catchphrase that I'm always looking for, and that is the one catchphrase that makes me vote for the other person. And it goes all the way back to Reagan during the debates with Carter, who clearly won the debate. They panned over to Carter's face, and he said to himself, wow, this guy just told the American people, I don't care about you.
Mm-hmm.
When a candidate says, we need less government, they're telling the American people, you don't count, we don't need you, and we don't want you.
Mm-hmm.
It's true what you say. They want the power to be in the hands of a few, and it seems to be going into the few who have the most money. I have been complaining about campaign reform for so many years, and nobody seems to listen. And it's on both sides. Both parties are guilty.
Oh, yeah.
Because when it came down to vote, both of them threw it out. Both parties. They don't want it. And they need to have it because that is what's ruining this country. we are not being heard, and now we find out that the machines are being owned by Cheney and his gang. And I'm a senior, and the last time I went to vote, I was asked for a picture ID.
Mm-hmm.
So it was happening already. It was already beginning to happen.
So
they're targeting certain groups. They're targeting seniors. They're targeting minorities. Anybody who's a little bit afraid, who doesn't want to speak up. But I have a brain and I have a mouth, and I'm going to speak up. Yes, go on.
So you're going to vote, right?
I'm going to vote.
Now, who are you going to vote for?
I'm going to vote for Obama
Mm-hmm.
because I don't like that Romney says we want less government, because to me it's telling me I don't count. I also like the fact that Obama is getting funds from a lot of people, not just a few very rich people. He's constantly asking us for $3, $2, $1, so on and so forth. I know what you say about our image on the rest of the world, because it's very true. When traveling abroad, people always ask me, "You're American?" I said, "Yes." They said, "Did you vote for Bush?" When I said no, they were like, "Oh, good, good, good." They clearly were very outspoken about the policies of that administration, and clearly this administration doesn't have the correct, everything's not correct, but like the gentleman two before me, I agree with him, it's the lesser of two. I have to vote. I have to show them that I have a voice. Whether or not my vote is going to go for the party that I'm voting for, I mean, I would like to see the entire country go on strike. When Gore, the whole thing happened with the courts, the whole country should have shut down like Lithuania did. Everybody's so afraid over here. We're so.
Oh, that's another thing. I'm just talking about voting. I mean, I'll tell you the other thing is, which is this country has to have a revolution, and I mean that. There needs to be a revolution in this country because it's so far gone down a fascist path, no matter which party we're talking about. The money is in charge, the military is in charge, the corporations are in charge. We're so far gone that voting is only one small thing you can do, and they hardly pay attention to it at all. If we don't actually have a revolution, massive civil disobedience, if we don't practice and have a revolution, we are lost. It's time for an actual revolution.
You're using language that people don't understand. They don't even know what the word fascism means. I blogged on the net about something, and the comments that I got from other people, they don't even know how to construct a sentence. They don't have thoughts.
That's because they're too busy looking at this trash that the media puts out, and that's
right.
But here's the problem. All right, let's move on to another call. Mark from Chicago, you're on.
Show before. It's a great show. Listen, I'm going to vote for Obama.
Mm-hmm.
When you ask people, like, do you see a difference between Obama and Romney? It's like, God, it's like night and day. I mean, it's, he's not perfect, but these things are going to take time. I mean, if Romney gets elected, we are going backwards. I mean, at least with Obama, maybe, change can be started or...
Yeah, how would that happen? How do you think that would happen?
Well, you know what? It's like ramming through some kind of election, changing the campaign finance.
Yeah, but the Democrats don't want that either.
You know what? It all comes down to people feeling like they have a say in their government.
Yeah, but they don't have it anymore. You don't have a say in your government. I don't.
Well, if you pressure, if people really voted for what their best interest, instead they're tricked into voting for, these issues about guns or gays or guns.
Look, wait. In 2006, I think it was, the Democrats got control of both houses of Congress, right? And wait. In 2006, all right. 2006, Democrats had control of both houses of Congress. Then in 2008, while they still had control, Obama gets elected. So we got the presidency, we got both houses of Congress. Why wasn't a campaign finance bill enacted?
My theory is there were so many Democrats that were coming up for election in 2010, they were scared to death. And they shouldn't be. Either you get in and vote for what your constituents want or get out. But they are so scared of losing their seats of power that they don't want to rock the boat, and that would be rocking the boat. That would, that's why we need, term limits. We need campaign finance.
Yeah, but where are we going to get that? Where are we going to get that from? The Democratic Party? Do you think?
No, but if we
then why vote for them?
Because otherwise, it's a step back into the Bush era. I mean, it's not perfect, but my God, it's night and day compared to the Republicans.
All right, you said the important thing is campaign finance. I can only agree with you. Most people will agree with you, right? That's where all the trouble is. The root of the evil is the money. But the people who had the power for years and a presidency who was a Democrat didn't do one damn thing about campaign finance.
And here's what I agree with you. It's going to take a revolution. It's going to take people out in the street.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Taking over, taking control. I mean, that's when maybe our representatives will pay attention to what we want. But, I mean, and these things take time. Look how afraid the American people are of these made-up things that, Fox News and whoever, spouts off all the time. We're a nation of, people just so paranoid. It's going to take, a generation or two to get people to come back around to realize we are supposed to be in charge of this government. And we want to be led right now.
Led?
Well, yeah, like...
What, like lemmings off a cliff? Like sheep?
To the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, lead. Absolutely lead.
Bunch of sleep.
When I worked as a probation officer in Brooklyn Family Court, they had a phrase, I think they still use this phrase, where if they wanted to let somebody off the hook who had got involved in a crime, which wasn't a really violent crime, they would say that this person was easily led. I would say that the American public is easily led and needs to be sentenced to probation,
Well, we're so manipulated, and they don't realize what the propaganda is being spouted off, and we swallow it hook, line, and sinker.
Listen, I got
Thank you for your show.
Yeah, all right, I got to take a break here. All the people who are on the line, hang on, and we're going to take our commercial break and sell you some hair oil or Viagra or gold, or maybe they could combine all three. Something you could rub on your head that turns to gold and makes you hard at the same time. And that way you wouldn't have to spend on 3 products. All right, let's go to a break. Okay, back again, Mike Fader on Sirius XM Left 127. We've got a bunch of calls on this issue, which we will take in a minute. But first...
From Philadelphia, CBS News, CBS Eyeball News. If size matters, male private parts are shrinking, according to a new Italian study on sexuality. The study's leaders... Kids are back in school now, it's okay. Well, it's September 20th. It's just adults out there now. The study's leaders claim to have bona fide research. I say bona fide probably here. Bona fide research that says the average size of a penis is roughly 10% smaller than it was 50 years ago. And the researchers say air pollution is why. Air pollution, global warming has been shown to negatively impact penis size. Italian researchers. I don't buy this. I think it's feminism. I think if it's tied to the last 50 years, the average size of member is 10% smaller than it's 50 years, has to be the feminazis. That would, the chickification, everything else. Give them time, and they'll blame Bush. Give them time. But air pollution versus feminazis? Ha!
Seems so nice to me. It's the start of a new day. And there's no place in this world that I'd rather be than right here with midnight and you.
I have a story. It's from Philadelphia. Right CBS News, CBS Eyeball News.
Right on. Why is Mr. Limbaugh, speaking of being influential radio personality, Why is he so worried about his penis? But that's not the real news. If if penises are down 10% worldwide because of air pollution, what about the fact that American brain size, according to a recent study, is down 50% because of air pollution? And when I say air pollution, I mean Rush Limbaugh. All right, let's go to who do we go to? Okay, Abdul, you're on, Abdul.
Oh, hey, Mike.
Hey.
Hey, I guess, no, my record. I guess I have to go for Obama this time around.
Mm-hmm.
But couple reasons. I believe he's not the perfect candidate. I've said many times somebody needs to call a repo man to repossess the Nobel Peace Prize. But at least there's to some degree he can at least hold the status quo, or at least focus on the Supreme Court, because that's the number one accomplishment of President Obama, is two good Supreme Court justices.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as he focus on that, then in 2013 I can then switch over to maybe focus on a third party, maybe the Green Party, and then focus on maybe socialize and money-wise.
Yeah, well, what's going to well, I hear you, of course, but what's going to happen in 2016, the next presidential? The Republicans will run some other bandit or caveman, and then everybody will say exactly the same thing. If it's, let's say, Hillary Clinton running against God knows who, right? Paul Ryan or Bobby Jindal or Bobby Jism or whatever his name is. I mean, or Chris Christie, everybody will call me up and say exactly the same thing. They'll say, we can't risk that. And it goes on forever. And we have a two-party system marching us straight into the jaws of corporations and the military.
Well, that's the thing that's up to the Green Party to change that. And the big obstacle.
No way. They can't do it by themselves. People have to vote for them.
Yeah, and people got to support them. Money-wise, and all that stuff. You know, if 6,000 people were to donate like $1 a day, maybe $30 a month, within a year, you know, they can get like $2-3 million. And that's enough, maybe like maybe a Super Bowl ad that for Dr. Jill Stein to at least get her name out there in the papers, to get people finally start talking about it.
I don't know. It's like you know, they have these RICO statutes, you know, where there's racketeering, where there's and you know, like antitrust stuff, where there's monopolies. The Democrats and the Republicans have an anti-democratic, un-American monopoly on the political process in the United States. The best example is that we've got 4 debates coming up, and you don't see two candidates, Johnson from the Libertarian Party and Stein from the Green Party, who are going to get between the two of them, they could get as much as 3 or 4 million votes, and they're on the ballot in like 30, 40 states. These are legitimate presidential candidates, but the Republicans and the Democrats freeze them off of the debate platform. They have no right to do that.
Yeah, but it reminds me of what happened during the 92 election, you know, when Ross Perot, you know, even though he was not on the debate, but then, you know, as soon as the debates were over, all the towns switched over like CNN with Larry King, and a lot of people saw what Ross Perot was doing. A lot of people started talking about him, you know, and that's the thing I see that's still kind of needs some kind of somewhere, shape, or form that she needs to get onto the spotlight. Maybe I don't know, Current TV or somebody to just get her name out there in the spotlight.
Well, I don't understand. For instance, I watch, let's say, Rachel Maddow or Ed Schultz or something like that. But I think Rachel Maddow is probably more, I don't know, I hate to say smarter, but she's sort of a little bit more to the left of anybody else on MSNBC. I would like to see her invite Jill Stein on just as a gesture to fucking democracy. But it's all go Obama all the time. You know, it's blind faith. I don't like it. You know, Abdul, I should move on.
All right, thanks for time, Mike.
Yeah, and thanks. Listen, Abdul, thanks for posting all that stuff on the Occupied Territory Facebook page.
Yeah, no problem. It was good. It was like 200-300 people, and then like it was like 200-300 cops, and then like 70-80 Occupy people. I was like, they were really overrun out there, but they were trying.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were making sincere efforts.
Hey, listen,
So,
if it's not teenage mom, who gives a shit? Okay, thanks for calling.
See you around.
God bless America, and God bless the United States of America and Americans, and God bless himself. God bless. God sneezed. God bless you, God. Joel from Utah, you're on.
Oh, hey, Mike. Thanks. You really speak my mind. I love your passion and your intelligence. I always vote Green Party because I think the other two is about the same, twiddle-dee, twiddle-dum. And at least if you vote Green or Justice, you'll be sending a message.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking about a revolution. Well, like you and I've been working since I've been 11, and I'm afraid to even protest, but I feel sorry for the downtrodden and the poor in the years to come, and I think that they should be standing up and doing more protesting. And then when it starts to affect me and yourself and others, then we'll all join in. But I don't think much will get done till then. What do you think?
I think it's already affecting everybody. I mean, the Affordable Care Act was passed, and it's helped a lot of people. But I'll tell you, there are millions of people who it's hurt, and I'm in that group of people. I'm in a sort of the vague middle class. I would say I'm in the lower portion of the middle class. Between me and my wife, we don't make that much money, right? And that our deductibles and our copays and the denial of certain services and bills to be paid by the health insurance company has gone through the roof since the Affordable Care Act. We're worse off than we were because we don't have single payer,
Well, I mean, I haven't had health insurance for years. I don't care because I spend that extra money in health foods, vitamins, mineral, and herbs.
Well, maybe you'll live to be 150, but I don't think I'm going to make it, and I'm not doing too well in between. Listen, I got to move on and take another call. Let's go to Sam from Massachusetts.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey.
Good. I just wanted to ask, why is it that both parties seem so subservient to Israel? How come it seems like
I think that there's different reasons for it. I think the main reason for it is that there are maybe 1 to 2 million votes that are Jewish voters, and they've taken all their polls and determined that maybe 70-80% of these voters, I think they're wrong, maybe 60 to 70 or 80% of these voters, especially in swing states, because these are older Jews who support Israel blindly without thinking about what Israel does in the world, they want those votes, and that's why they support Israel so much. Also, I think the conservatives support Israel because a lot of them are fundamentalist Christians, and biblical prophecy says they should support Israel.
But they get on debate and they brag about who loves Israel more and who cares about Israel more. Like if the other guy is saying, "Oh, I'm a much bigger Israel supporter," like they really don't seem to care so much about American interests. Everything is about Israel.
I think that I think that 95% of what comes out of Obama's mouth and Romney's mouth is whatever they say about any issue, no matter how they put it, no matter how passionate they get, it's about getting themselves reelected. That's their greatest goal in life.
Yeah.
That's it.
But
all right.
I think it has a lot to do with the whole permanent war thing, the whole Middle East. There's no more Cold War, so they need an enemy.
Oh yeah, got to have an
War,
enemy.
Terrorism.
Got to have an enemy. Now they don't have to worry so much anymore because now there's a permanent enemy. It's called terrorism. And guess what? Next day, after they get rid of the ones in the Middle East, it'll be you and me.
That's what worries me.
Yeah,
That's
you should.
both parties are to blame, in my opinion. Obama pretended like he was going to turn everything back from Bush, but then he didn't do anything.
No, actually, you know what? He's acted worse than Bush. Nobody has gone after whistleblowers, people who actually revealed the vile behavior of the United States government more than Mr. Obama. Nobody has ever set his Justice Department like dogs to go after whistleblowers like Mr. Obama has. He's got the worst record.
What worries me more is about Mitt Romney is at least Obama doesn't let Israel attack Iran and start World War III. But Mitt says that all Middle East foreign policy he will defer to Israel.
Well, that's true. That's true. You got a real difference there. That's true. All right. I'm just talking about the political structure. I mean, obviously, Mr. Obama, I don't mean to sound like an idiot, I'm not stupid. Obviously, Mr. Obama is better in many ways than Romney. In some ways, he's much better. Romney is unthinkable, right? But what I'm trying to talk about is widening our point of view so that we don't spend the rest of our lives walking down this corporate fascist military path, even though one of them smiles and is better than the other one. It's enough already. We got to change this. We got to move on and take another call.
Thank you.
Gordon from New Mexico, you're on.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Hey.
Hey, Mike, I think when you're voting for Obama, you're really doing an enabling thing there because, I walked for this character back when he went up for his first election, and immediately, what did he do but appoint Geithner and Sumner? He never really tried for a public health program. He just wanted political cover so he could go ahead and get big corporate donations. And look what he's doing now. That's where his donations are coming from. It's the big corporations. I don't think there's really much of a difference. There is differences, but when you really add it up and sum it all out, I think we pretty much.
Who are you? Who are you going to vote for?
I'll probably vote for a Green Party candidate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it'd be interesting to see how many votes they get this time around. I mean, this is what's happening.
And I think if enough people do that, maybe the Democrats will get in their head that they can't just go ahead and bait and switch, to talk a sweet tune and then go ahead and then, turn the whole game over to the corporations, which they do.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's a dangerous. I acknowledge that it's a dangerous game to play, but I think the point you made is a very, very important point. I think that the Democrats and Obama take millions of voters like you and me, maybe tens of millions of voters who are Democrats and liberals. They take you utterly for granted. They don't give a shit about you. They know you're going to vote for him because nobody's as bad as Romney. And he takes your vote for granted, and you don't have any representative government. And to send the Democrats a message by millions of people voting for the Green Party, maybe it will get them to sober up a little bit and move to the left where they belong. Nothing else ever will, because half the Democrats are millionaires, just like half the Republicans. Nancy Pelosi, for Christ's sake, her and her husband are worth $70 million. Definitely people of the people. Let's go to Chris in New York. See, Chris?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, I like where you're coming from. I think everybody has to have the different viewpoint, even though I look at, and before I even address Obama, I agree with what you said about the revolution. I think, and it convinces me more after the presidency of Obama that it has to come from the people about real change. But the way I look at the President Obama, even though I accept even like the different viewpoints, is that if he goes too far, or any president goes too far, I mean, without putting it out there, you know what will happen. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? Do you agree with what I'm saying?
Well, you gotta be more clear about what do you mean by going too far.
Okay, John F. Kennedy was one of them who went too far.
Now I see what you're saying.
Understand what I'm saying? He had a backbone. He stood up to him within the inside, and I think there's a government within the government.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? And so I think he realizes that he has to be smart enough to realize it, and he doesn't want to be a martyr. And so he has to tap dance in a way. I mean, anybody who gets in there, I don't care how radical you are, unless you want to die. And I think and it's a funny thing, if you die as a martyr, will the people really be with you, even though we talk a lot? You understand what I'm saying?
I guess, you know what, I guess he wants to protect his life. I mean, he's a man like any other man. He's a human like any other human. He's got a family. He's got children. He's got a wife. He wants to save his life. But, it's interesting, you get a guy like FDR. His life was threatened by the very same people. When FDR was running, and right after he got elected, some of the richest people in the country, the same old crew, the Romney types, the really rich people, the corporate people, the Rockefellers, all these people, they got together and they actually had a meeting, and they tried to recruit the former head of the United States Marine Corps, who was one of the most famous soldiers that ever lived in this country, right? And his name was Smedley Butler. And they actually came to him and said that they couldn't tolerate the idea of FDR being in charge, and they wanted him to lead an actual right-wing coup, and he refused them. But they plotted against FDR's life, and his life was threatened, and they hated him, and his life was in jeopardy. He almost got killed. He almost got assassinated. It happened to be by some nut who was unaffiliated with them. But he went ahead and had the courage, even though he had children and had a wife and a family, he had the courage to do it. Here's the way I see it. If you have the nerve and the guts to be the president of the United States, and tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people in this country and other places, their lives are in your hand, then you put your life on the line. Otherwise, you don't even deserve to be running for office. Let's get one more call, and that's about it for tonight. Let's go to Mark, wherever you're from. Mark, you there? Yes? No? Let's go to Bert from Louisiana. Bert from Louisiana, you're on.
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Hey.
In a state like where I'm in,
yeah.
Louisiana, there's like almost literally no chance that a Democrat will win for president. They can make a good argument for people here who, want to vote for Obama. Tell them, hey, look, vote for the Jill and these people, and what the hell, your vote will be used for something, and maybe she'll win the state,
Yeah, but I think that what the guy said before, I think you're right. I mean, it's a good point. I mean, maybe you could look at it this way. If you want to be really practical, if you live in a place where there's no chance on earth that Obama's going to get elected, and there's several states obviously like that, then vote for the Green Party. Send a message to the Democratic Party. You can't take us for granted anymore,
I wasn't thinking about the Green Party, but a friend of mine and I were thinking about like a libertarian, I guess. But that's more like a Republican Party, and I think he was thinking along the lines of let's mess them up,
Well, the Libertarian Party. I mean, it's like Ron Paul was. The Libertarian Party, basically, their stand on foreign policy works out to the same way mine does, but for different reasons. They're isolationists. They don't want to get involved in any way with the rest of the world, let alone militarily. They want to pretend the rest of the world doesn't even exist, right? But otherwise, the Libertarian Party is very much a party of Ayn Randism and take care of yourself and fuck you if you don't have any money,
Yeah, so that's the problem with that vote. That's why I didn't like that idea, but I like this idea of vote for the Green Party, man.
Well, I think maybe if you want to look at it from a practical point of view, and this is sort of compromising your principles, it's not something I'm going to do, but if you live in a place where either it's going to be overwhelmingly for Obama or overwhelmingly against him, then vote for the Green Party. Send a message. Let's take one more call. All right, thanks.
Okay.
So, let's try Joshua from New Jersey. You got about 2 minutes, Joshua. Oh, Nick from Texas. All right, Nick, go ahead. You're on, Nick.
All right, Mike. To everyone that is wanting to vote third party, I just want to say this is just an attempt to clear your conscience. We participate in an intermittent democracy every 2, 4, 6 years. In the meantime, in between, we do nothing. It is up to us to force them to listen to us and do our bidding, not wait and hope that they're going to do it for us. So instead of voting third party, and it's not going to happen anything. You're not going to elect anyone from third party. Still, the two parties will be in power. Vote whatever Republican, Democrat, and then get out on the street and make your votes heard. Register your protest vote out on the street, day after day, weekend after weekend. Don't sit in a park over there wait for someone to bring you pizza, and you call it a movement. That's not a movement. That's sitting down. You get in the street and you march, just like in the 60s, during the Vietnam War. That's when things happen.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. The vote is one thing, and it's less important now than it ever was, because they obviously don't pay any attention to your vote, no matter what party you vote for. If you could vote, go ahead and vote. It's still part of the American system, although a waning part that's almost useless. The real vote is out on the street, just like it was in the 60s. The Occupy movement, I don't know what happened there. But in the 60s, which I lived through and participated in, you go out on the street, you end the war. You go out on the street, you get civil rights. You go out in the street, you get rights for women, you get rights for gays. The only time you ever got anything was going out on the street in this country. The country itself went out on the street. It started on Boston Common in 1776 or 1775. You want something? Go out on the street. They're never going to give it to you. The people in power become like the people who were in power before. They just pass it down. Power is its own reward. Power is its own device, its own self. So go on in the street. Unless we get out on the street in the millions, the system will never change, no matter who you vote for. Let us go and hear a little bit more about Mr. Limbaugh's penis, and I'll see you next week.
Midnight seems so nice to me. It's the start of a new day.
Pistorius from Philadelphia, CBS News, CBS Eyeball News.
There's no place in this world that I'd rather be.
If size matters, male private parts are shrinking, according to a new Italian study on sexuality. The study's leaders, kids are back in school now, it's okay. Well, it's September 20th. It's just adults out there now. The study's leaders claim to have bona fide research. I say bona fide probably here. Bona fide research that says the average size of a penis is roughly 10% smaller than it was 50 years ago.